Chapter 1654. When his mind went blank, Black Dragon felt as if a small dot of light had suddenly appeared in the dark world of his heart. It was as if something was awakening in his body, giving him a splitting headache. Almost instantly, the pain of his brain being torn apart made him roll on the ground in pain, roaring incessantly. In the spectator stands, Black Dragon's abnormal reaction caused the silent crowd to boil up again. No one knew what had happened. All they saw was Black Dragon holding his head, his limbs twitching like maggots. Black Dragon. Stand up right now. Do you know how much I spent? Zhu Yuanrun roared. He stood below the ring and cursed. But at this moment, Black Dragon could not hear anything else. He only had one question, and that was to know who he was. Why did he appear in this world? All this time, he had only carried out the tasks given to him by a few fixed commanders. He had never thought of getting to the bottom of his identity. But at this moment, Black Dragon felt as if he had, faintly changed. In the face of Zhu Yuanrun's curses, his pupils, which had already turned into a normal human, shrank. Then, he suppressed the pain in his head and jumped off the ring. This action stunned Zhu Yuanrun and the audience. Black Dragon. You lunatic. Jumping off the ring is forfeiting. Zhu Yuanrun was furious. He never thought that Black Dragon would disobey his orders. This was a hired thug that he had hired from that lord. All the parts on his body were of the highest quality. Just the monthly fee alone was an astronomical figure. But Black Dragon was very useful. As long as Black Dragon went on stage, it meant that he would win. Zhu Yuanrun had spent a lot of money, but Black Dragon had made even more money by accurately punching for him in the ring. At this moment, Black Dragon expressionlessly walked in front of Zhu Yuanrun, grabbed him by the neck and raised him up high. Speak, who am I? Zhu Yuanrun could not breathe from Black Dragon's grip. His limbs twitched as he struggled. He used all the spiritual energy in his body to try to pry Black Dragon's fingers off. But Black Dragon was too strong. No matter how hard he tried, he could not move. Save me. Zhu Yuanrun felt like he was going to die. He had never imagined that he had spent so much money to buy the Black Dragon from that lord. How could he betray him? He had just renewed the fee 2 days ago. He clearly had the highest authority to command the Black Dragon. Boz. Just as the Black Dragon was about to die, the golden lamp in the body of Kamiya Yoshiko suddenly made a move. A Buddha's light shot out from her fingertips and hit the back of the Black Dragon's hand precisely. The Black Dragon was in pain and had no choice but to separate Zhu Yuanrun. Then, with a stomp of his feet, he transformed into a cannonball and directly blasted a big hole in the ceiling, escaping from the underground arena. This palace was too much of a hindrance. And his commander wasn't just Zhu Yuanrun, there had to be someone who knew the answer he was looking for. Cough cough. Damn Black Dragon. Zhu Yuanrun was like a stray dog, lying on the ground and coughing for a long time before he stood up shakily. Director Zhu, are you all right? That Black Dragon has gone berserk, what should we do now? Just as the Black Dragon was about to go berserk, a few servants who were hiding far away came over one after another. What should we do? Put him on the wanted list. How dare he do this to me? Zhu Yuanrun rubbed his red neck, his expression was still painful. Yes, Director Zhu, the servant replied. There is one more thing, Director Zhu. What is it? That Mr. Hu Baoguo ran away. Ran away. Zhu Yuanrun was so angry that he almost fainted, he almost lost his balance. This result could be said to be unexpected, but it was reasonable. The Black Dragon's battle strength was originally above Hu Baoguo's. Even the Black Dragon was suppressed, and with Hu Baoguo's self-preservation personality, he definitely wouldn't continue the next match. But this way, The outcome of this dojo challenge was already very clear. He had lost completely. In the end, the Black Dragon and Hubagwa, one betrayed and the other ran away. He didn't even have the chance to secretly manipulate them. Why was he so unlucky this year? Yet, so many unexpected things had happened. This year's batch was really the worst he had ever led. Director Zhu. Then now, announce it. Zhu Yuanrun sat paralyzed on the ground. Although he liked to manipulate the situation behind the scenes and control the situation of the match, at this critical juncture, all paths of escape had been blocked. The only way out for him was to admit defeat. Although he would lose a lot of money, it wasn't like he couldn't afford to lose it all. Of course. There was actually another very important reason why Zhu Yuanrun was so willing to admit defeat. Just now, Kamiya Yoshiko had saved his life from the Black Dragon. After the announcement, bring this Mr. Gong and Dekus to my office. Also, call his companions to my office. Zhu Yuanrun rubbed his throbbing temples, waved his sleeves, and left the scene surrounded by everyone. When the bunny girl whom Zhu Yuanrun had arranged came on stage to announce the winner was Gong, Audjo still couldn't believe it. He admitted defeat just like that. All paths have been blocked, what else can he do but admit defeat? Qin Zong laughed. I thought he wouldn't admit defeat, but I didn't expect him to be such a straightforward person. Maybe it has something to do with Miss Yoshiko saving him just now. But what on earth is going on with that Black Dragon? I feel like he's a different person. Audjo frowned. It seems that the stability of this new divine weapon is still a little lacking. That purifying Buddhist light just now made him start to think about life. Wang Ming said, as highly intelligent life forms created by humans, it's theoretically possible for these intelligent life forms to develop self-awareness. Things were becoming more and more interesting to Wang Ming. According to the odds, we can get a total of 60 million yuan, Qin Zong said at that moment. I think we should go look for Senior Immortal and the others to make up first. Senior Immortal is also here. Yes, and with Loopy Toad, said Wang Ming. With his brain waves, Wang Ming was already incomparably familiar with sensing the waveforms of these acquaintances. Of course, the most important thing was that apart from grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Loopy Toad, he seemed to have also sensed a very subtle fluctuation that seemed to be neither right nor wrong. It was a little like Wang Ling, but it wasn't quite like it. This guy. After another simple probe, Wang Ming couldn't help smiling bitterly in his heart. If his guess was right, Wang Ling probably hadn't personally come to this world. Instead, he was peeping, as expected of Ling Ling. Even though they were separated by a space, they could still peek. Were peeping techniques now so powerful that they could project things across screens? On the other side, Kyuya Ryoko and the others were led to Zhu Yuanrun's office. After a short wait, several of Zhu Yuanrun's manservants arrived at the scene with 10 suitcases full of cash. Because this was a shady business, most transactions in the underground boxing arena were in cash. Dekus counted the numbers lightly, and after confirming that there were no mistakes, he nodded with satisfaction. I never thought that President Zhu would actually keep his promise. This is a little unexpected. I thought this old guy would play Tai Chi with me. Dekus, you've gone too far. Speaking ill of people behind their backs. Am I, Zhu Yuanrun, such a shameless person? At that moment, Zhu Yuanrun walked in through the door, looking like an old capitalist in a suit and leather shoes. As soon as he entered, he bowed to Lotus Sun, Kyuya Ryoko and Jin Dang. Thank you, Mr. Gong, thank you all. If it hadn't been for you just now, I'm afraid I would have died at the hands of the Black Dragon. Dekus smiled. President Zhu, apart from the bonus, it seems you're missing something. I know what you're talking about. I prepared it a long time ago. As he spoke, Zhu Yuanrun took out 4 rainbow crystal cards from his bosom. These are your passes. How come there are 4? Dekus stared at them with wide eyes. 4 passes. One of them was worth 20 million gold gear coins. This was wealth that people in the slums couldn't accumulate in their entire lives. One of them is for you. The other 3 are for Mr. Gong and his friends, Zhu Yuanrun said generously. He had acquaintances in the core area, so while these 4 passes had cost him some money, they weren't actually as expensive as their market value suggested. There are conditions, right? Kyuya Ryoko asked in a changed voice. Mr. Gong is smart. Zhu Yuanrun said solemnly, actually, it's not too much. I hope that Mr. Gong can help me stop the Black Dragon. This guy has gone crazy, and I'm guessing that his next move will be to find other commanders. They have a deep cooperative relationship with my boxing arena. If I let them die just like that, the consequences will be very troublesome. Chapter 1655. Stop Black Dragon. This mission sounded reasonable, but from what Deckars knew of Zhu Yuanrun, he always felt that this old guy wouldn't be so kind for no reason. After receiving the pass, Zhu Yuanrun didn't force them to stay, and didn't even sign any specific contract with Lotus Sun, Jimiya Ryoko, and Jin Dang. A purely verbal agreement made people feel even more mysterious and uneasy. Because he had obtained the long-awaited Core Zone pass, Deckars quickly completed the handover of the position of director. The next director was appointed by him. Meanwhile, he packed all kinds of belongings that he had prepared beforehand into a fully packed package, which he placed in a luxuriously decorated carriage. He couldn't wait to go to the Core Zone, that heavenly world that could be clearly divided from the slums. From the moment he got the pass, Deckars couldn't bear it anymore. At this moment, he stood in front of the carriage and had a final conversation with Lotus Sun and the others. I still maintain my original opinion. This Zhu Yuanrun isn't a simple character. He wants you to deal with the commander, there must be some other reason behind it. Don't believe the nonsense that he's doing this to repay you. Deckars frowned. This person is just a businessman who won't get up early without profit. Thank you for the reminder, Mr. Deckars. We'll be careful. Under the cloak, Lotus Sun thanked him with a smile. She and Jimiya Ryoko naturally also thought of this. As the successors of the Sun and Jimiya families, even though they were very young, they had personally experienced a lot of wars in the business circle since they were young. It was full of murderous intent and undercurrents, and the slightest carelessness could lead to a horrible death. In fact, when Zhu Yuanrun gave them the pass, Lotus Sun and Jimiya Ryoko had a tacit understanding that this boss Zhu might be up to something else. More words, I will not say more. Thank you, everyone, for your help. You've allowed me to achieve what I've always dreamed of. Deckars gave a hearty smile and handed each of them a golden name card he had printed. Ha ha ha. This is my address in the Core Zone. You're welcome to come and play with me whenever you're there. Then, he stepped onto the luxurious carriage heading to the core area. Accompanied by the long neigh of the white spiritual horse with mechanical limbs, this carriage driven by the black deacon under Deckars sped towards the place of his dreams. Lotus Sun gazed at the departing carriage, vaguely sensing that many things had happened. Her willowy brows were tightly furrowed and a strong sense of unease welled up in her heart. She wasn't like Wang Ling or Golden Lamp, who had that kind of realm and powerful ability to predict the future. However, because of Mysterious C's passive ability of becoming one with the sword, her sixth sense as a girl was magnified limitlessly. This directly gave her an ability similar to Wang Ling's eyelid warning back then. This could be considered a danger warning, but it wasn't as accurate as Wang Ling's. It's all fate. Looking at Deckars, who was leaving, Golden Lamp Monk sighed at this moment. He seemed to have predicted something. Did Senior divine something? Lotus Sun asked. He's about to experience his predestined calamity. Even if this poor monk saves him now, he won't be able to change anything. What's meant to happen will happen sooner or later, so it's better to face it earlier, Golden Lamp Monk said. Unless one could reach Wang Ling's level. Otherwise, no one could have the ability to defy the heavens and change fate. Listening to Golden Lamp, Lotus Sun thought for a moment. Then, she sighed. No matter what Senior Golden Lamp thinks, I still don't think we can just sit back and do nothing. Isn't it always a Buddhist disciple's duty to save the common people? When she said this, Lotus Sun felt like she was going a little crazy. She was actually fighting with a supreme Buddhist saint. This was simply inconceivable. Miss Rong is right. Golden Lamp was non-committal. If we don't save one person, how can we save the common people? Lotus Sun continued. Hearing this, Golden Lamp was startled at first, and then he laughed. Since Miss Rong wants to do it, this poor monk will naturally accompany you. Actually, he hadn't expected Lotus Sun to say this. As a supreme Buddhist saint, there was no way he would argue with a girl. And Lotus Sun's words actually weren't unreasonable. Moreover, it sounded like old Jiang Xia. After deciding on their next step, Lotus Sun and the other two decided to take action right away. They also boarded a luxurious carriage, but unlike Dekis, they had hired the coachman and carriage. In the carriage, Lotus Sun and Kiyomiya Ryoko exchanged masks. The main reason was that the danger in the core area was unknown, and Lotus Sun felt that it would be very dangerous for Kiyomiya Ryoko to continue playing the role of Gong. But Lotus Sun was different. Because of mysterious Sea and Sun Yinger, she had a little ability to protect herself. As for the reason for changing masks, Kiyomiya Ryoko was clearly very conflicted. In the carriage, she asked, but I still don't understand, why change masks? It's to confuse him. To confuse Senior Joie. Lotus Sun casually made up an excuse. When you were fighting just now, I vaguely sensed that he seemed to recognize you. Ah. Is this for real? My disguise was so good. That's right. Therefore, if he were to change the mask now, he might be able to confuse them. And their next step is definitely to go to the core area. If we go there first, it'll be good for us to control the situation. Rongrong's right. After saying that, Kiyomiya Ryoko couldn't help sighing. That was really dangerous. I was almost recognized. Elsewhere, Xu Yuanrun stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window in his office, using a custom-made high-powered telescope to stare at the only luxurious-looking white jade avenue in the slums. Carriages occasionally passed by on the way. This white jade avenue was the only road connecting the core area and the slums. It was heavily guarded, and there was no other way to enter. The walls of the core area were 60 meters high, and there was a lightning boundary above them, which wrapped the core area tightly like an egg. The bricks and tiles of the walls were all custom-made, so there was no possibility of smuggling. Director Zhu, Dekis and that Mr. Gong have already set off. After waiting in front of the floor-to-ceiling window for a while, Xu Yuanrun heard the news from his manservant. Very good, everything is going according to that lord's plan. Xu Yuanrun nodded. That lord? The manservant was somewhat puzzled. What else? Do you think I'm so kind as to prepare such expensive passes for them to enter? Xu Yuanrun said, although I bought these 4 passes through some means. But that lord has reimbursed me all of them. He also compensated me for all the losses caused by the Black Dragon in the casino. So that's how it is, as expected of Director Zhu. What happened next has nothing to do with me. Xu Yuanrun spread his hands and said leisurely, next, it's time for that lord to perform. What performance? That lord is obsessed with the research of the new mechanized cultivator. The Black Dragon is the hand that created him. That Mr. Gong is too outstanding. He's a great seedling. If he can replace his human brain and use it for his own use, he will become a stronger fighter than the Black Dragon. Xu Yuanrun grinned and said, in this way, the perfect mechanized cultivator template that lord has always wanted to design is born. After that, as long as it is put into mass production, everything can be controlled. Chapter 1656. There was a tavern called Sega, in the slum's 6th Ring Road area, and the signboard hanging over its door smelled of light pollution. The purple neon sign flickered at a strange frequency. This was the most prosperous and lively place in the slum area of this technology cultivation city. The rich in the core area didn't just earn money from the rich, but also from the poor. For example, Zhu Yuanrun ran a shady business in underground boxing arenas. In addition to several large auction houses in the core area, the wealthy merchant Jia Bugui, who was currently under Wang Ming's control, also benefited behind the scenes from many taverns and bathing centers. For the poor, their lives were inseparable from baths and alcohol, which were excellent ways to relieve the fatigue of the day. Before coming here, Wang Ming had already informed Jia Bugui's manservants to completely clear out the tavern so that the members of Battle's sect who had come to this world could have a meeting place. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and Loopy Toad were the first to arrive after receiving Wang Ming's brainwave message. After coming to the illusory land of nothingness, Loopy Toad took on a human form, which was a rare occurrence. In a modern cultivation city, its beautiful green hair and human form would be laughed at. But that wasn't the case in this technology city. Apart from the people in the core area, every mechanized cultivator displayed their individuality to the extreme, with all sorts of colorful hairstyles. Loopy Toad's beautiful neon green hair and human form could even be seen as a manifestation of its individuality here. When Wang Ming and the others arrived, they pushed open the door and entered to find the two of them carefully sipping a glass of iced whiskey. When they saw each other, they cupped their fists in salute. Wang Ming and Zhuo, greetings, Senior Immortal. Zhou Zi, greetings, Sect Leader Grenade Throwing. Qin Zong grinned and cupped his fists in salute. So you're the Grenade Throwing Senior Immortal that Brother Zhuo mentioned. You're younger than I imagined. Brother Wang Ming has already conveyed Brother Qin's matter to me via brainwave. Since we all have the same goal now, once we're done with the illusory land of nothingness, I'll definitely find a way to help Brother Qin return to his original world, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said confidently. Since True Monarch has said so, of course I believe him unconditionally. Also, I feel that we hit it off very well, as if it's not the first time we've met. Qin Zong said with a smile, it's not that urgent to go back. Because I find this place quite interesting. Hearing Qin Zong's response, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal breathed a sigh of relief for the time being. In fact, he roughly knew Qin Zong's identity. However, because he had reached an agreement with a certain someone, he didn't say it out loud. Everyone, take a seat. We're all brothers, so there's no need to stand on ceremony. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal raised his hand and motioned for everyone to sit down. As always, he was amiable and didn't have the slightest air of a sect leader. Seeing Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's attitude, Zhuo also vaguely sensed something. He somehow felt that Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal seemed to know Qin Zong. Moreover, he knew the background of this lucky person. After a few seconds of silence in the tavern, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said, actually, to tell you the truth, back when my title of Great Death-Courting Senior had just started to gain popularity, I didn't know what to do. Then, he noticed that there was such a mysterious barrier in the Arctic Circle. It was just that my realm at the time wasn't high enough to explore this place. Senior Immortal already knew. Zhuo was a little surprised by this answer. That's right. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal nodded. At that time, I sensed that this was a big game of chess. It was just that given my limited strength, I was afraid I wouldn't have been able to intervene. But the existence of this mysterious country in the Arctic Circle and a special barrier that no one in the world knows about, this has always been a hidden danger. And most importantly, the founder of this mysterious country didn't make any unnecessary movements. In order not to alert the enemy, I had to keep this matter a secret. I just didn't expect that Shochung to actually have a special connection to the founder of this mysterious country. Since Senior Immortal already knows that this place is a hidden danger, given your personality, have you already planted spies to monitor and set up a trap? Audra asked. Of course I have. Furthermore, I specifically looked for Brother Gu, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said, Brother Gu protected me, and the other party successfully infiltrated this world. The truth was that the person he had wanted to look for at first had been Wang Ling. But because Wang Ling had really troubled him too much at the time, he hadn't been able to bring himself to do it, so he had later turned to Gu Xuanji. Loopy Toad had listened to Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's account of the whole story before anyone else. After he finished listening, Loopy Toad instantly felt like spitting out a mouthful of curses. He felt that Senior Immortal was sometimes too naive. What didn't his little masterling know? I see. Hearing this, Wang Ming and Audra nodded. After all, Gu Xuanji was a keeper of order and an official sent by the heavenly Tao to correct the order of the universe. It wasn't strange for him to know about this. It was just that they were now curious about who on earth this person Gu Xuanji had vouched for was. So who is Senior Gu vouching for? Audra asked curiously. As he spoke, he noticed that Qin Zong's expression was a little unusual. For some reason, he seemed to be a little sensitive to the words Senior Gu. This person's background is a little special, and perhaps none of you have heard of him. He started his business by recycling waste. The waste recycling station that you and Brother Zhuo appeared at earlier was actually something that he managed after sneaking in. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal smiled. Legend has it that this senior rose to prominence in a wasteland cultivation world to begin with. But before you came here, this senior's real body had already left. Real body? What do you mean, Senior Immortal? After all, I entrusted him to keep an eye on this place for a while. Although I promised him a lot of benefits, I still had to let him go home to take a look. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal explained, so before I came here, I personally looked for Brother Ling and entrusted Venerable Nuan with leaving behind this senior's shadow. SS. There's actually this kind of operation. Audra sucked in a cold breath of air. But isn't the personality of a shadow the complete opposite of the original body? You can't say it's the complete opposite, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said. A shadow is just an expression of what most people feel in their hearts. If a person's inner and outer appearance are similar, the shadow they create actually won't be much different. You can just treat it as the original body. This senior's shadow is very obedient and will do its best to play the role of the original body. Saying this, Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal clapped his hands. A few seconds later, a person slowly strolled out of the small tavern's back kitchen. When this person pulled open the back kitchen's curtain, everyone finally got a clear look at his face. He was a handsome and delicate youngster who actually looked about the same age as Wang Ling, but the resolute expression on his face made him look a little mature. He was wearing one-piece overalls and was carrying a long black cloth bag that looked a little like a cello case. Senior Immortal, is this senior a musician? Zhou Zi raised his hand obediently. A musician? My sister is, but I'm not. The newcomer smiled modestly. With a flip of his hand, he unloaded the big black bag from his back and put it on the ground, then patted it lightly. This is my spirit sword. Spirit sword. Saying this, the youngster unbuckled the black bag and unzipped it. If it wasn't for a spell like the X-ray spell, almost no one would have guessed that inside this bag, which looked like a large musical instrument, was actually a fiery red high-powered sniper rifle. Hello, everyone. Allow me to introduce my 9-yang divine sword, the youngster said with a smile. Then senior's name is? Audra asked. Me. He quickly put away his playful expression and his eyes flashed. My name is Xiang Yi. For some reason, after the newcomer gave his name, Odd Joie, Josie, and even grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, these people who had originally lived in this local modern cultivation world suddenly felt as if time and space were intertwining. Chapter 1657. In the illusionary land, in the core area of the technology city, a splendid castle was shrouded in darkness. A thin and long beam of light was refracted from the top of the steeple at the top, which seemed to be connected to the sky. With the beam of light as the center, a barrier without any blind spots spread out and connected to the outer wall of the core area. Below the castle was a splendid night market. It was lively, prosperous, and never-ending, completely different from the deathly stillness that shrouded most areas in the slums. This castle was the place where the legendary lord lived. The only road leading to the castle was the main road that had been completely cordoned off more than 10 hours ago. It was dozens of kilometers long. Mechanized cultivator guards were stationed every 10 meters, and countless tiny reconnaissance drones the size of fireflies were hovering in the sky. They were moving around the castle in a regular pattern, monitoring all unusual movements around the castle. Li Xian and Zhang Zipei had successfully sneaked into an astrology club named Starry Sky. Yes. Zhang Zipei played his old tricks again and stole 2 passes of the dignitaries in the core area so that they could come to the club without any hindrance. Li Xian, as the captain of the ancient experts, was naturally against the idea of stealing. However, after Zhang Zipei stole a few passes, he was forced to accept the arrangement. Even if he did not accept it, Zhang Zipei would find other ways to get what he wanted. For example, the 10 million gold gear coins they had right now was stolen by Zhang Zipei. His goal was clear. After sneaking into the core area, he immediately stole the signal base station, installed near the core area, and began to send fraudulent text messages. The specific content of the text messages was very simple. He said that he was the secret disciple of the Lord, and that he had made a bet with the Lord for a certain research project. Right now, he was collecting research funds. He was confident that he could prove that his theory was completely correct. If the bet was successful, he would receive a bonus 100 times the research funds. When he got the bonus, he would give it back to all the sponsors of the research. There was no telling if it was because he was stupid and had too much money. Li Xian did not expect that someone would really keep transferring money to Zhang Zipei's new electronic wallet. In just a few hours, they had collected a total of 10 million gold gear coins and arrived at the astrology club that was famous for divination. The membership fee for this club was 100,000 gold gear coins per person per year. It was a pleasure for the rich and powerful. After joining the association, in addition to being able to conduct a fortune divination for free every day and a question divination once a week, there was also a monthly Starry Sky blessing gathering to help people absorb the universe's luck through divine power and become European. However, after some evaluation, Li Xian and Zhang Zipei both felt that they might be able to find the clues they were looking for in this place. As soon as they paid the membership fee and entered the restaurant, Li Xian and Zhang Zizai heard the discussion at the next table. Have you heard? The Black Dragon had escaped, betraying its commander. The government just issued a mobilization order, offering a bounty of 1 million gold gear coins. No wonder martial law has been imposed. It's not necessarily because of the Black Dragon. It said that a few hours ago, someone saw a mechanical guard carrying a coffin into the castle. It's just hearsay. I don't have any proof. I still think it has something to do with the Black Dragon's escape. So, who is the current commander of the Black Dragon? That Zhu Yuanren who runs an underground boxing ring in the slums. So it's him. I think it's better not to get involved in this matter. That Black Dragon's combat ability is extraordinary. Even if we really meet him, it's questionable whether he'll be able to live to report the news. That's true. It said that the Black Dragon is that Lord's proud creation, the first fully mechanized defense-type cultivator. This time, the Black Dragon almost caused the commander to die in his hands. That lord is probably going mad with anger. 3 dignitaries and a blonde lady dressed like a witch were holding hands and discussing around a table. On the table was a crystal ball. Before performing astrological divination, one's body and mind had to be completely relaxed. Therefore, gossiping before the divination was often the most effective. As everyone knew, the best way to relieve stress was actually to gather together and talk bad about outsiders. Anyone who had experience living in a dormitory would definitely understand this. The most outrageous example was when there were 4 people in a dormitory. Each of them would privately create 3 groups, pull in 2 roommates that they thought were passable, and then complain about the 4th annoying person together. It was so real that it was frightening. Originally, they were talking about the black dragon. As they chatted, the topic suddenly changed to that lord, and the witch in charge of divination immediately spoke up to control the situation. This was not something they could discuss. That lord could foresee things like a god, monitoring everything, and could hear anything. Regarding this point, the witch was very clear in her heart. She had also heard of a rumor that the light beam refracted from the castle's spire was also known as Thinker. Its role was not only as a barrier. At the same time, it could also play a monitoring role. Although this was only a rumor, in order to avoid trouble, she still smiled and advised with a gentle voice, "Gentlemen, do not discuss national affairs, to avoid bringing trouble upon yourselves." The 3 dignitaries nodded. "Madam Melissa is right, it was our slip of the tongue." "No matter. Then, the astrological divination will officially begin." This person called Melissa spoke quietly, and then began the following instructions. "Everyone, please listen to my instructions. First, slowly close your eyes, completely empty your mind and mind, imagine the starry sky in your mind. Then, in your mind, ask the questions you want to ask." Her mouth muttered. After a few seconds of silence, the crystal ball on the table began to flicker with a faint starlight. Unexpectedly, not a swindler. Li Xian observed from the side for a long time. He thought that this kind of club was a place to cheat the rich, but he did not expect that the witch in front of him actually knew a bit. However, she definitely did not know as much as him. In the ancient times, he was a famous star traveler. Manipulating the stars, controlling the stars, attracting the star calamity. All the starry sky spells could be said to be omnipotent. Of course, this also included this astrology. After approximately 3 minutes, this woman called Melissa gently released her hand. "The Star Lord has already understood your request, and has given an answer." Then, a girl wearing a maid uniform took out a quill from the side. Melissa quickly wrote down the questions and answers of the 3 people on 3 pieces of paper, and handed them to the 3 people. At this time, Li Xian saw Zhang Zizai walking forward. With a sneaky appearance, he immediately knew that this guy's itchy hands had acted up again. "Brother Zizai, what are you doing?" "Nothing much, just taking a look." Zhang Zizai transmitted his voice. To be honest, if not for Li Xian pulling him back, he might have really taken the 3 pieces of paper. But now, it was fine not to take them. Because his eyes were sharp, he had already seen what was written on the paper. He transmitted his voice to Li Xian. "These 3 people, the first question is, why does everyone call that lord, and not directly call him by his real name?" Li Xian, "Why?" Zhang Zizai, "Because, that person's surname is that, and his first name is a taste. After getting used to calling him, it became that lord." Li Xian, Zhang Zizai, "The second question is, if one day the technology city is destroyed, what is the reason?" Hearing this, Li Xian could not help but draw back the corner of his mouth. "This question is interesting." Zhang Zizai, this woman called Melissa replied, "If the world is destroyed, the most likely reason is that someone tripped and caused a big explosion. Tripped and fell." Li Xian was stunned. Was a fall enough to destroy the world? Even if a cultivator at the soul formation stage occasionally fell, it would just leave a hole in the ground. To destroy the world, it would only happen if Wang Ling tripped and fell. One last question. Zhang Zizai continued. The third person asked, is there a second season of the Immortal King's daily life? Li Xian smiled meaningfully. So, is there one? Zhang Zizai nodded. There is. Furthermore, it is today. At this moment, when everyone is reading this chapter, Bilibili has already announced it. Chapter 1658. Melissa's calculations were more accurate than Li Xian had imagined. To be honest, he hadn't been expecting this result. She wasn't a swindler, and in Li Xian's opinion, the accuracy of the astrological divination was just barely passable. The only pity was that there was too little information. Accuracy was one thing, but as an outstanding astrological divination practitioner, the most important thing was to be able to sort out their own clues from the starry sky and accurately say as much as possible about what they saw. Although Melissa's accuracy was high, it also meant that she might have seen very little information. That was because the information obtained from the astrological divination could be true or false, and it was up to the astrological divination practitioner themselves to distinguish between right and wrong. When it came to uncertain information, astrological divination practitioners would generally choose to keep their mouths shut and only say what they were certain about. In this way, they would appear very high and mighty. For example, is there a second season of the Immortal King's daily life? Melissa only saw that there was. Li Xian also saw other information from the astrological divination. For example, the second season of the Immortal King's daily life contained the following elements: Demon World Chapter, Loopy Toad Chapter, Square Root Wang Ling Crushes Everything Square Root Beat Demon Saint Square Root Every Episode of Pretentious Square Root Invisible Hair Candy Square Root Relaxed Sand Sculpture Square Root. Melissa hadn't been able to see any of the above information from the astrological divination. Of course, she might have seen it, but she just couldn't tell if it was right or wrong. Seeing that Li Xian and Zhang Zidin had been staring at her for a long time, Melissa immediately finished what she was doing and turned to them. Gentlemen, would you like to try divination? You're new members, so today you can have your fortune divination and question divination at the same time. Fortune divination. Li Xian smiled gently and said, I know that brilliant divination masters can change luck. Can you do it too? Melissa gave a professional smile. According to the different changes in the astrological divination and the constellation each person belongs to, there will naturally be strong and weak luck. It's impossible for anyone to have excellent luck every day. Oh. Is that so? Zhang Zidin was skeptical. He actually didn't believe in such things. After all, in ancient times, he had always been lucky. The only time he had made a mistake was when he had fallen at Dao ancestor Wang's hands. The daily fortune prediction was a free divination for members. But in fact, this seemingly free project was actually very sophisticated. Hearing that the two new guests were interested in luck, Melissa immediately knew that she had to complete her daily KPI in advance. The so-called change of luck is only achieved through some small auxiliary tools to achieve the effect of balancing the luck star. In other words, you can absorb a bit of the luck of the people around you to dilute some of the bad luck on your body. This way, you won't seem so unlucky. Melissa spoke frankly with assurance, showing that she was very professional. However, Li Xian was an expert. This was showing off in front of an expert. The Star of Fate was indeed a special celestial body that could affect one's fate. Moreover, it was indeed possible to use some special astrological tools to guide the luck of the person who received the most blessing to the person who needed to change their luck. However, such a method could only be achieved by an extremely high level of skill. Of course, Li Xian could do it. But Melissa, he guessed that with this lady's ability, she would not be able to do such a thing. However, the situation had not been clarified, and Li Xian could not directly accuse Melissa of swindling her. Thus, he used a probing tone to ask, "Then, Lady Melissa, in this astrology club, are there any astrologers stronger than you?" "No, I'm ranked first." Melissa shook her head. Li Xian and Zhang Zipei, all right, a swindler, but regarding the astrology divination, Li Xian was actually very interested. After all, their goal was not to divine astrology, luck, or fortune. They wanted to obtain some specific information. Of course, Li Xian could also use astrology to deduce information. However, to do so through astrology, the crystal ball used for divination was of very high quality. The club's crystal ball was too inferior, and might affect the results of the divination. Of course, the most important thing was the opponent was an ancient rank expert, and would definitely be prepared in this aspect. It would not be good if they alerted the enemy. Thus, obtaining information from a human was currently the best outcome. "Alright, Lady Melissa, we need to conduct the divination." At this time, Li Xian said, "Welcome. Then, can the two of you please follow me? The fortune divination is in another room." Melissa bowed, then led the two of them to a room specially used for astrology divination. In order to prevent the luck from affecting the surrounding people, the divination needed to be done individually. Li Xian and Zhang Zipei communicated with their eyes, and finally, Li Xian took the lead to enter the velvet-carpeted room. After the door was closed, Melissa put on a special purple crystal gauze dress, wrapping her body tightly from head to toe. This was to prevent the astrologers in charge of the divination from affecting the fortune of the examinee. "Sit, Mr. Li." Then, Melissa and Li Xian sat down, facing each other. Different from the crystal ball used for the weekly question and answer, the crystal ball used to test one's fortune was pure black, as deep as a black hole. Li Xian feigned ignorance and asked, "Then, Lady Melissa, what do I need to do?" "Put your hand on it. And, please clear your mind, and then put your hand on it. First think of something happy, then think of something sad," Melissa said. "Okay." Li Xian nodded his head. However, the matter was out of Melissa's expectations. Because after the first round of divination, she was actually unable to see the position of Li Xian's luck star. The slight astonishment in her eyes told Li Xian that Melissa's divination had a problem. "What happened, Lady Melissa?" Li Xian laughed. Melissa closed her eyes, not admitting defeat, and used all her strength to calculate. Then in the next second, she suddenly stood up. This is impossible. Why is your luck so good? I've never seen anyone with a fate star that's full." Because using the luck star to determine one's fortune is not accurate. Li Xian laughed calmly. "With Lady Melissa's knowledge, since you know about the luck star, then you should also know about the existence of the fate constellation, right?" Fate constellation, the so-called fate, only with fate can there be luck. Cultivators who have studied astrology can use it to light up their own fate constellation. From there, they can achieve the goal of eternal luck. "Senior, who exactly are you?" Melissa was shocked. "Do you want to learn? I can teach you." Li Xian touched the black crystal ball, and laughed, "But the condition is that you have to give me something to exchange for it." When Melissa heard this, she immediately pondered for a long time, as if she was going through an intense struggle in her mind. After a few minutes, Li Xian asked, "How is it, have you thought it through?" Melissa seemed to wake up, and then nodded her head with determination. I understand, Senior." Then, she started to take off her amethyst robe in front of Li Xian, and then her clothes. At this time, Li Xian was even more frightened as he hugged her. "What are you doing? Didn't Senior say that you would give me something to exchange for it?" "But I didn't say that you would give yourself." Chapter 1659. Li Xian rejoiced. Among the many ancient powerhouses, he was still considered a gentleman. He would not take advantage of others when they were in a precarious situation. But if it was Zhang Zipei who entered the house, it would be different. The yellow-haired female astrologer in front of him was not Li Xian's cup of tea, but Zhang Zipei was a dissolute person, and had stolen from all kinds of people, all kinds of models and skin colors. It was really hard to imagine, if it was Zhang Zipei who entered the house, this Miss Melissa would not even have her bones left. What I want is not your body, you should know from my face that I am not that kind of person. Li Xian sighed helplessly. He was handsome, elegant, and did not look like the trash of that school. In fact, it was Melissa's imagination that was overthinking things. Moreover, she felt that if something really happened between her and Li Xian, it would not be a loss. After a moment of silence and awkwardness, Melissa once again wore the clothes she took off, and then sat in front of the divination table. After calming down, she asked indifferently, "Then, what does Senior want?" At this time, the two of them had a tacit understanding, and acted as if nothing had happened. "It's very simple, you want me to teach you my craft. Then, I will exchange some information that I am interested in." Li Xian stated his conditions. "Senior's astrology is so strong, there is still information that you do not know." Melissa revealed an inconceivable expression. "Astrology is not omnipotent. Even if it is me, when facing an opponent who is prepared in this aspect, there is still a chance of making a mistake. So, it is better to directly ask someone who has the information." Li Xian sighed, and said frankly. He knew that Melissa actually had her own concerns, and directly grabbed her hand and placed it on the black crystal ball in front of him, and started a very simple astrology calculation. Then he opened his mouth and said, "Miss Melissa, your mother's body does not seem to be very good. So, you are currently very short of money. This astrology club is opened by your boyfriend, but your boyfriend is a scum, flirting everywhere, so you already have no feelings for him. The reason why you are here to swindle customers to buy transportation products is mainly to treat your mother's cervical spondylosis." Hearing this, Melissa revealed an inconceivable expression. It was the first time she had met Li Xian. It was impossible for anyone to know so much about her. Moreover, Melissa had never mentioned her mother's illness to anyone. At this moment, when she heard Li Xian's words, she couldn't hide the shock on her face. "Senior, perhaps this is a little offensive to Lady Melissa, but these are the things I just saw." However, there were some other private matters involved, and if he said too much, it might cause Lady Melissa to feel pain. "Let's not talk about it." Li Xian waved his hand and frowned as if he was thinking. He said indifferently, "Lady Melissa's mother's illness, I know of a set of primal chaos divine arts that can cure it. Hunyuan cultivation method. Senior Li, can you use the Hunyuan technique to treat my mother's cervical spondylosis?" Of course. This set of cultivation technique was very simple and did not have many realm restrictions. And if he only taught the part of massage therapy, you can learn it yourself. Li Xian said. He crossed his fingers and held his chin. "I can teach you how to treat your mother's illness, and I can also teach you some new astrological methods." As long as he grasped the core skills of astrology. In this place, you can completely get rid of your philandering boyfriend. Isn't it popular now for independent women to do it? Why? Melissa felt her heart beating fiercely. Li Xian's words. Directly attacking the soul. She had to say it. It gave her a strong feeling of heartbeat. She had done all of this for so many years. In the end, the simplest reason. It was nothing more than to protect her family. After careful consideration, Melissa raised her head with tears in her eyes. "Then Senior, what do you want me to do?" Li Xian calmly smiled. "I want to inquire about that lord." Melissa was not stupid, she had seen Li Xian's methods. In her heart, she had already guessed Li Xian's intentions. She did not say anything. She just turned around and opened a secret compartment. She pressed a button. Instant time. In this fortune divination room, the walls on all four sides were like fish scales that flipped over in an instant, and almost every compartment was embedded with a different colored crystal. After doing all of this, Melissa nervously said, "Senior, I have arranged this room for a long time. I do not know if it will be useful, but it is the best way to stop the explorers. But time is limited. Once the energy of the crystal is used up, it will not work. Explorers. This is what that lord uses to monitor the situation. It is also known as the will guard," Melissa said. "All of our wills are monitored by that lord. Senior should have seen the light beam above the castle, right? Unless there is a way to block those light beams." Just as she finished speaking, the energy of the crystal in the room had already been used up. From start to finish, it did not even last for a minute. At this time, Li Xian had completely understood. Melissa did not dare to say anything, she did not even dare to think about the matter regarding that lord. The operation of the Will Guard was a huge deterrent to all the mechanized cultivators in the technology city. However, people like Li Xian and Zhang Zipei who had snuck in from the outside would not be threatened like this. As long as we block the light beam above the castle, it will be fine. At that moment, Li Xian muttered in his heart, and then sent a telepathic message to Zhang Zipei outside. "What do you think, Brother Zipei? It's just stealing light, I'll give it a try." Zhang Zipei received Li Xian's request. Without another word, he disappeared from the divination club like a ghost. At the same time, in Sega Tavern in the slums, a group of people from Battle's sect was also discussing a plan to get rid of this illusory land of nothingness. After hearing about the Will Guards, everyone in the Battle sect became interested. "Will Guard, is it?" Wang Ming raised his eyebrows in Jia Bugui's body and said, "This method of monitoring will has been a rumor in the core area for a long time." "That's right. I only confirmed it after lurking here for a long time. But this Will Guard has no effect on outsiders like us who have snuck in here. It's just a potential deterrent to the local residents here," Xiang Yi replied. Then, everyone turned to look at Wang Ming. Wang Ming felt a little creeped out by the stares. "You don't have to look at me like that, I'm not a spy. Although I'm currently controlling Jia Bugui's body, the Will Guard can't pick up my brainwave signal, so it's still Jia Bugui's signal that the other party is picking up. Right now, Jia Bugui looks like he's sleeping, so it won't arouse any suspicion." Then, does Mr. Wang Ming have a way to connect to Jia Bugui's will? At that moment, Qin Zong and Xiang Yi asked almost in unison, their thoughts coinciding. They looked at each other and smiled. Wang Ming immediately understood what the two of them meant. If he could manipulate Jia Bugui's brainwaves and release a false signal, it would be a perfect cover for their next move. But it wasn't like there weren't technical problems with this operation. Once Wang Ming's brainwaves interfered with Jia Bugui's, the two brainwaves would merge into one, and there was a risk of exposure if they weren't careful. "I'll try." At that moment, Wang Ming slowly closed his eyes. He hypnotized himself countless times in his heart as he muttered, "I'm Jia Bugui. I'm Jia Bugui. I'm Jia Bugui, Brother Zhua, what is Mr. Ming doing?" Zhou Zi was puzzled. Zhua replied indifferently, "Don't you understand? He's trying to hypnotize his own brainwaves to ensure that there are no other risks after he intervenes." The truth was that when Wang Ming began to operate, it wasn't just Zhua, even grenade-throwing senior immortal, Loopy Toad, Qin Zong and Xiang Yi were deeply shaken. This was clearly just an ordinary person, but an ordinary person with no spirit energy at all was actually able to develop his brain to this extent. It was simply terrifying. A lie repeated 1,000 times was the truth. If you wanted to deceive others, you had to first deceive yourself. Chapter 1660. As a user of brainwaves, Wang Ming naturally knew the danger of connecting two brainwaves in series. It was easy for him to hypnotize himself into Jiabugui, but if he got too immersed in his role, there was a high chance that he wouldn't be able to come out in the end. However, this was only a small portion of Wang Ming's brain waves. Even if something really did happen when the time came, it would at most be this small portion of his brain waves that would be assimilated, and wouldn't have any impact on the main body in the outside world. After a few minutes, he opened his eyes with a flushed face. Jia Bugui's body had clearly become scalding hot from the operation of the brainwaves, and there was even steam rising from the top of his head. For the time being, it's a success. Wang Ming nodded. I've already homogenized his brainwaves, so I can become him at any time without being detected by the willpower guards. In terms of movement, I have already used my own brainwaves to implant suggestions. You only need to use certain gestures or sounds to control Boss Jia's body to move around. In other words, you haven't completely connected yet. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal asked. That's right. Completely connecting the brain waves and twisting the two brain waves into a rope, in my opinion, this was the last step that had to be taken. Because once I'm connected, I'll become Jiabugui, and it's hard to say whether I'll be able to back out, Wang Ming replied. At the moment, he was still in a semi-connected state. Because of the brainwaves, he had become Jiabugui, which was probably unexpected for the heartless patriarch and his disciple. Wang Ming was also well aware of how important his role was. Therefore, he had to make use of his identity to play every move well. If he made the slightest mistake, everyone here would be at risk of being exposed. And the plan that grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had painstakingly entrusted to this Senior Xiang Yi for so many years would completely turn into bubbles. The people sitting here weren't idiots. Naturally, they could also imagine what Wang Ming was thinking and what his concerns were. It was just as Wang Ming had said. He had to use the identity of Jiao Bugui to deceive the heartless patriarch and his disciple through the willpower guard and lure them into the trap they had set. This was already the last step. At that moment, Qin Zong stared at Wang Ming's Jiao Bugui face for a long time before he suddenly thought of something and asked, "Come to think of it, it wasn't just our group who infiltrated this world, right? I ran into Brother Zhua and classmate Zi. Then I met you guys. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, it was because I saw Miss Rong and Miss Yoshiko's text message. At that time, Brother Dog and I happened to be investigating Shochong's kidnapping, and in the end, we didn't expect to track them to the edge of this illusory land of nothingness." Hearing this, Zhuo was shocked. It was actually Master's wife who sent you a message. No wonder Yoshiko followed you here. It seems that when I sent her the message, she was probably right next to me. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal sweated. So they came here because they saw your text message, Brother Zhua. They even called Senior Golden Lamp along in passing. I'm afraid so. Then how do you know about this nihility illusory realm? Naturally, it's Senior Li Xian and Senior Zhang Zipi. They should be the first group to explore this illusory realm. Hearing this, everyone fell into a long silence. It turned out that the real purpose behind this string of nesting dolls was actually to switch maps for the battle sect team building activity. Are these two seniors very strong? Qin Zong asked again at that moment. It wasn't just him, even Xiang Yi had a puzzled expression on his face. After all, the two of them were the only outsiders in this battle sect team building activity. These two are 10,000 level experts. Loopy Toad, with its head of lush green hair, also said with a face full of sweat. Hence, after the current analysis, the people in the tavern suddenly discovered an incomparably stiff problem. The first group to enter was Li Xian and Zhang Zipei. The second group was Zhuo, Zhou Zi, and Qin Zong. The third group was Lotus Sun, Jamiya Yoshiko, and Golden Lamp. And now, the fourth group was Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, Loopy Toad, Xiang Yi, and Wang Ming, who had already merged with the second group. Their current plan was to use the willpower guards to deceive the heartless ancestor, to get more information out of him. But now, in a situation where their actions didn't match up, it was very likely that this would result in a false start. That was, the other two groups would be completely unaware of the heartless ancestor's plan. They would directly rush over and destroy this willpower guard. Obviously, everyone thought of this and couldn't help feeling a little worried for a moment. It looks like we have to get to the core area as soon as possible and meet up with them. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal smiled bitterly. To be honest, this trip to the illusory land of nothingness had turned out like this. He was partly to blame. He had originally wanted to hide something and investigate in secret. In the end, he hadn't expected other people to also notice this place. But to enter the core area openly, we need to prepare a pass. The market price for a pass is currently 20 million gold gear coins. Plus the 60 million silver gear coins that Brother Qin Zong earned. I'm afraid that won't be enough for us, said Audua. That's easy. If I count my money, buying a few passes won't be a problem. It won't be a problem to buy a few. Xiang Yi stood up. After all, he had been asked very early on to be stationed in this world as the head of the waste recycling station, and had accumulated some money. How much can you buy? Based on my family assets, with my meager savings, I can probably buy 3 of them. Xiang Yi did some calculations. Xiang Yi calculated 3 passes for 60 million gold gear coins. Everyone was stunned, and they all looked at him with admiration in their eyes. Is recycling so profitable these days? It's just a trivial trick, Xiang Yi said with a modest smile. But even so, apart from Wang Ming, who had Jia Bugui's identity, there were still 3 people in their group of 7 who didn't meet the requirements to enter the core area. If it's 33, it might work, said Wang Ming. Mr. Ming, you mean, it's not like there aren't any poor people in the core area. However, those who are shabby are mostly slaves and servants that these nobles bought from the slums outside. Wang Ming said, how about this, we'll continue with our current group. Have Brother Xiang Yi give the 3 passes to Odd Brothers' group. Senior Immortal, Brother Xiang Yi and Loopy Toad will have to trouble you to enter the city with me. Of course, no problem. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said, then, where should we meet up after we enter the city? Jia Bugui has an astrology club in the core area. Let's meet up there, said Wang Ming at that moment. Chapter 1661. When Wang Ming decided to use Jia Bugui's identity to lead grenade-throwing Senior Immortals group into the core area, the faces of several women instantly flashed through his mind. As one of the few bigwigs in the core area who ran all kinds of brothels and had almost monopolized the market, Jia Bugui had a natural advantage in the core area, but in fact, he also had a lot of debts. These debts weren't about money, but about love affairs. When it came to love, Wang Ming had always been single-minded. He had never truly fallen in love with anyone, but once he had given his feelings, he was determined to the end. In fact, when his brainwaves had entered Jia Bugui's body back then, Wang Ming had his own concerns. The main reason was that he had sensed Jia Bugui's romantic nature, and was worried that it would contaminate his pure self and make him unclean. But considering that Jia Bugui's identity would indeed be helpful to their mission plan, Wang Ming had finally made up his mind to take control of his body. Thus, Wang Ming had completely activated Jia Bugui's brainwaves and merged them with Wang Ming's brainwaves. This was Wang Ming's final step in facing death with equanimity. In any case, this was just a small portion of his brainwaves that had been separated from his body. If it was contaminated later, he might as well not put it back. Staying here forever was, in fact, the better choice. Everyone set out one after another. In order to avoid arousing suspicion, Odd Shua and Wang Ming led the 2 carriages, and deliberately set off after some time. Odd Shua and the others went first. Just like that, they saw the only exclusive main road. The core area of the technology city. Shrouded in the glitter of jewels and treasures, the Imperial City, which gave off an extravagant aura, appeared in front of everyone. In the center of the city, above the ancient castle, the light beam that connected all the guards and the powerful defensive barrier was released from the top of the tower. Like a birdcage, it formed an umbrella-shaped protection that enveloped the entire Imperial City. Looks like that's the target. Zhuo was a little astonished when he saw this scene from a distance. He thought that after so many days at Wang Ling's side, he had witnessed a lot of big scenes. But as he stood here now, the scene in front of him made him tremble slightly and a little out of control. Was this the power of an ancient expert? Although he had already faintly felt some pressure when he was in the slums, but when he really entered the core area of the Imperial City, he felt a little pressure. This world constructed by an immemorial rank powerhouse using the strongest laws was presented before him, and his heart was shaken. For the first time, Zhuo couldn't understand it. Of course, what made him feel even more unreachable right now was not the pressure from the laws of these ancient powerhouses. Instead, he was thinking about something else, that was Wang Ling. He knew very well how powerful Wang Ling was. But the truth was that Wang Ling had never shown 100% of his combat strength in front of him. The laws created by the ancient powerhouses were enough to make him feel this way. If one day he completely removed the talisman seal, what kind of scene would that be? In the team voice space, Zhuo, Zhou Zi, and Qin Zong created a separate space to communicate in secret so that the hired driver in front wouldn't hear their plan. That must be the light beam that connects to the willpower guardian. Qin Zong rubbed his chin and narrowed his eyes. They were still very far from the ancient castle, but the light beam emitted from the top of the castle made him feel a little uncomfortable. "This light makes me uncomfortable," he said. "Me too." Zhou Zi shivered. He had the lowest realm among them. If it wasn't for the 5 layers of long johns he was wearing, he suspected that he would have fainted as soon as they entered the Imperial City. But no matter how uncomfortable it is, we have to endure it first. For now, we still have to think of a way to lure out the heartless ancestor and his disciple. There should be a lot of ways to destroy this light beam. Saying this, he suddenly asked Qin Zong, "By the way, I don't think I've seen you use any magic treasures." "I have weapons too. I just don't use it often," Qin Zong said, spreading his hands. "And it has been upgraded to a chaotic artifact for a while. It's just that every time I use them, the situation is already perfectly resolved, so there's no place for me to use them." "Are you showing off something?" "No, Brother Zhuo. I'm telling the truth." Qin Zong laughed. "I'm just a little luckier than the others, you can't blame me." Click. At that moment, a shutter flashed as Zhuo took a photo of Qin Zong. "Qin Zong. Zhuo, didn't you say you were luckier? I'll take a photo of you and forward it to see if this mission will go smoothly." Zhou Zi clutched his stomach and burst into laughter. "Brother Zhuo, you think Brother Qin Zong is a koi fish? Forward it to a collection of good luck." For a moment, the atmosphere in the carriage fell silent. After a few seconds, Qin Zong suddenly felt the atmosphere drop to a visible freezing point. Holding his phone, he could see that it was trembling. "Brother Zhuo?" Qin Zong asked tentatively. I sent it, Zhou Zi and Qin Zong. F***K. Isn't this illusory world equivalent to another world? Why is there a mobile signal? Zhuo was horrified. Was this the same world, the same mobile signal? He had originally wanted to post Qin Zong's photo in his WeChat moments, and had planned to set it as a private photo that only he could see, in order to avoid Kumiya Ryoko's misunderstanding. In the end, he had just been absent-minded and had directly sent it out. Furthermore, it just so happened that he was about to die. Not only had Kiyomiya Ryoko seen it, she had even given him a like, so now, Ajwa instantly broke out in a cold sweat. It's over, it's all over. At that moment, inside the carriage, Ajwa felt the sky go black as he looked up. I'm here, sister-in-law probably won't do anything to you. Chin Zong laughed. To be honest, he also wasn't sure why such a coincidence had happened. But generally speaking, given the current situation, it looked like Ajwa was the unlucky one. As long as they were together in the world, Chin Zong felt that they would definitely have extraordinary luck in other areas because of the accumulation of luck. In short, Brother Joie, don't think too much about it. I'm wondering if I should go to the coffin shop and order a coffin for me now. Ajwa dropped his forehead into his hand. In this imperial city, Jiabugue, who is possessed by Mr. Ming, has eyes and ears everywhere. He'll definitely find a way to find the other two groups led by Master's wife and Senior Li Xian. That was true, but Ajwa felt that he already didn't have the face to meet Kiyomiya Ryoko. Ha ha ha, Brother Joie is right. But have you ever thought that we might run into sister-in-law on the road? Said Chin Zong. No way. Ajwa abruptly raised his head at these words. Chin Zong had just been joking in passing. Who would have thought that as soon as he said this, outside the window of the carriage, three familiar cloaked figures brushed past their carriage. Ajwa looked at Chin Zong in horror. Excuse me, has your mouth been blessed? Chin Zong, ? Chapter 1662. Although this group of people were wearing masks and cloaks, when the carriage passed by, Ajwa could still sense a hint of coldness emanating from under the cloaks, and he could tell that one of them was Kiyomiya Ryoko. He broke out in a cold sweat on the spot, making Chin Zong very nervous for a moment. He had just wanted to make a joke, and hadn't really planned on running into Kiyomiya Ryoko on the road. In the end, he hadn't expected luck to be used in this kind of place, and he had hit the nail on the head. Of course, Chin Zong hadn't expected Ajwa to be this scared. It looked like he would most likely be the henpecked type in the future. In the carriage, they had a tacit understanding not to disturb Lotus-san and the others. Instead, when the carriage passed an alley, they quietly gave the coachman some money to quietly follow them. Ajwa had mustered up his courage to do this, even though he only dared to let the coachman follow them secretly for now. The main thing was that he didn't know what Ryoko would do if she discovered him. Their purpose in going to the astrology club was to find the remaining two groups as soon as possible to avoid any mishaps. In the end, they had run into Kiyomiya Ryoko on the way here, which was like delivering a pillow to them when they were feeling sleepy. Ajwa had initially thought that cell phone signals wouldn't work in this alternate world, but after the incident in his WeChat moments just now, he instantly saw the light. He immediately wrote 2 messages and sent them to Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal, telling them their current location and that they had found Kiyomiya Ryoko. The other message was sent to Li Xian and Zhang Zizi, but it was more reliable to let Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal's physical body inform these 2 ancient seniors. The 2 of them had only just come into contact with modern things like cell phones, and weren't particularly familiar with how to operate them, so it was inevitable that something unexpected would happen. After doing all this, Ajwa breathed a slight sigh of relief. He quietly pulled open the curtains on the side of the carriage and peeked out the window at Kiyomiya Ryoko and the others who were hurrying along. What on earth are they going to do? Ajwa murmured. And it seems they specially switched masks with Ryoko. Are they afraid she'll be targeted? Do they want to keep her safe? Ajwa's words were enough of an inspiration. Chin Zong of Chin Zong rubbed his chin and abruptly said, a dojo challenge in an underground boxing arena costs nearly 6 million gold gear coins and a pass. And sister-in-law's employer was the police chief, Dakar's. He himself was here for the pass. Then how did sister-in-law and the other 2 people get their passes? Oh right. Shou Zi nodded. Even if the director gives all the bonus to Yoshiko, a communication pass from the core zone is worth 20 million gold gear coins. That's not enough. Bingo. So the only explanation is that someone is sponsoring them. Qin Zong snapped his fingers and said with a calm expression, the person who is most likely to sponsor is the boxing arena operator, Zhu Yuanrun. Is it because Senior Golden Lamp saved him from the Black Dragon? Zhuo frowned. Judging from Zhu Yuanrun's hostility towards them in the beginning, he felt that this person was not a nice person. Furthermore, such a cunning person who thought of all sorts of ways to use improper means to trip up his opponent had actually admitted defeat so openly. This also made Zhuo vaguely feel that something wasn't right. It seems that Brother Zhuo and I both think that this Zhu Yuanrun isn't a good person. In the carriage, Qin Zong folded his arms and analyzed, when all is said and done, this Zhu Yuanrun is just a capitalist who doesn't get up early without profit. This kind of person. It's impossible for him to make a loss. That's why he gave them extra passes. Someone must be helping Zhu Yuanrun to lure the enemy deep into their territory. Zhuo and Zhou Zi heard this. They were all silent and deep in thought. The main thing was that Qin Zong's calm analysis made everything sound so reasonable. It could almost be described as impeccable. Of course. Qin Zong actually wasn't too sure about this conclusion. That's just my point of view. Brother Zhuo and Brother Zi can just listen to it. They might also be confused. Confused? A koi fish like you can also be confused. Zhuo laughed in his heart. In fact, Qin Zong hadn't confessed his true identity to Zhuo at all, but Zhuo already regarded him as a koi fish in his heart. Everything was so natural. But now, the carriage wheels came to a stop again. The driver at the front lifted the curtain. Sirs, the area in front is a private residence. The carriage could not go in. I saw that the lords you were chasing had already entered through the entrance. Okay. Many thanks. Zhuo nodded. Soon after, they also got off the car. Was it as the coachman had said? What Zhuo and the others saw was a magnificent mansion with richly ornamented beams and painted rafters, on which all kinds of ancient mechanical beasts were carved, perfectly blending in with the style of this world. Including the plaque decorated with neon lights on the door, the words, D Manor, were written on the flickering lights. So this is the official residence of that director. Zhuo stood at the door in a daze. Then, he started to pace as well. He followed Kyuya Ryoko and the others in. His intuition had always been accurate. He had a feeling that something bad was about to happen. Even though Zhuo knew very well that, Monk Jin Deng was here. Even if they encountered great danger, it would not be a problem. However, he still had to protect his own woman. This was what a real boyfriend should be like. Should they split into two groups and take the other carriage? As expected, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal and the others, who had entered the core city as servants, received news from Zhuo. As expected, Brother Zhuo is very lucky. Not long after entering the city, we ran into Miss Rong and Miss Ryoko, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said with a smile. Actually, he had already expected this outcome. After all, Zhuo was with that one and only koi in the cultivation world. Then are we still going to the astrology club? Xiang Yi asked. We still have to. Every week, a large number of dignitaries pour in to divine the stars and fortune. Although finding these two people in this imperial city is like looking for a needle in a haystack, it's not as difficult as you think. Wang Ming nodded as he used his brainwaves to transmit the location of the astrology club to everyone else's minds. This was a real-time map. The flashing red moving dot was their current location, and the destination of the astrology club was marked with a yellow asterisk. It was clear at a glance. It's actually this astrology club. Xiang Yi was startled when he saw the mark on the map. What, you've been there before? Loopy Toad raised its eyebrows and asked. That's right. Come to think of it, it's a coincidence that I actually run a tobacco, alcohol and snacks shop next to the astrology club. I'm the behind-the-scenes boss of that shop. Furthermore, today is the day of the special sale. Special sale. All kinds of snacks. Limited edition figs, limited edition lollipops, limited edition crispy noodle snacks, and so on. The rich and powerful may not be interested in these little things, but the children of the rich and powerful are very happy to buy them. They often carry them back home in boxes for the card collecting event. Xiang Yi laughed. Sure enough, it's the easiest to earn money from children. Otherwise, where do you think I got my 60 million gold gear coins from? Hearing this, everyone in Battle's sect couldn't help falling silent. Limited edition crispy noodle snacks, and it was a limited edition crispy noodle snack from another world. For some reason, everyone in Battle's sect had a feeling at that moment. Perhaps that man was coming. Chapter 1663. Tomorrow was his birthday. Actually, Wang Ling hadn't been looking forward to it since there had been too many mishaps on his birthdays in the past, and he had long since passed the age where he could look forward to birthdays. Every birthday told Wang Ling that he had grown a year older, and that he had become even more powerful. For Wang Ling himself, before he found a way to completely control his combat strength, every birthday was nothing more than a reminder that God had stuffed another spoonful of gunpowder into his body. His peers were now looking forward to their birthdays, but Wang Ling hoped that time could pass a little slower. As far as he could remember, he had never had a birthday party since he was 7 years old. Because it was hard to imagine him being able to blow out a candle and create a fire escape grand fireball technique, and directly burn down his home, so this year's birthday present was the same as in previous years. With Wang Ling's permission, Father and Mother Wang still gave him the option to buy something he liked. 17 years old. This year's birthday gift red packet seemed to be more generous than in previous years. Surprisingly, Father Wang wasn't stingy. The couple stuffed 17,000 HNY into the red packets. For Wang Ling, this was shockingly a huge sum of money. When he opened the red packets, he received the couple's heartfelt wishes. On each bright red banknote was written beautifully in pencil, "Happy birthday, son." Father Wang had been fiddling with these 170 banknotes in his study for a long time last night. He had written a lot of well wishes online, and after sorting out his thoughts, he had planned to transcribe them on the banknotes bit by bit. Later, he realized that there were too many well wishes, and it seemed that these 170 banknotes weren't enough to fully express his feelings. Thus, out of all the words he wanted to say, there was only one sentence left: "Happy birthday." But Wang Ling didn't intend to spend all this money. The main thing was that he couldn't think of what he wanted to buy, and what he really wanted to buy was a certain snack from the snack shop, which was so cheap that he didn't need to spend so much money at all. After putting the money away, Wang Ling planned to go to the bank and deposit this huge sum of money into his account. Just as he was about to teleport away, little girl Nwan had crawled over at some point and tugged at his trousers. Actually, Wang Ling had recently realized that this little girl especially liked to stick to him. And he was not a person who liked to be stuck to by others. Perhaps it was because they were related by blood, but he didn't reject Nwan's clinginess at all. Wang Ling looked at Wang Nwan. "Do you want to come with me?" Wang Nwan exclaimed, "Aw." Therefore, he half squatted down and picked little girl Nwan up. His movements were smooth and natural, and he could not find any mistakes. In fact, this was the result of Wang Ling practicing it many times in private with Loopy Toad, mainly because he was afraid that he would be too stiff and make his little sister uncomfortable. Seeing that Wang Ling had picked her up, little girl Nwan was also happy. Her chubby body leaned against Wang Ling's shoulder like a little fat bird perched on his shoulder. She liked to nestle in her big brother's position. The whole scene was so warm that it was unbelievable. If there was someone else watching, they would definitely feel that it was unreal. Although he hadn't shown any expression from beginning to end, this gentle gesture and the way he treated his little sister with such care and gentleness always felt unreal from Wang Ling, the role model of our generation. After depositing the money, the whole process took less than half an hour. The specific time taken was shown below. Wang Ling used the great teleportation spell to move to the nearest bank. The whole process took less than a second. Wang Ling noticed that the ATM machines were under maintenance, so he took the initiative to take a number and wait for it to be processed manually. There were a lot of people on Saturday. Then, he had to queue for a full 27 minutes before his turn was called. Then, it was time for the manual deposit, which took another 2 minutes, but thanks to this time in the queue, Wang Ling was able to sort out his thoughts about what he wanted this year. He felt that the other world's limited flavor crispy noodle snacks in the land of nothingness seemed pretty good. It was just that the currency in the real world couldn't be used to buy them. But the truth was that Wang Ling had some savings in that world. Because not long after grenade-throwing Senior Immortal had realized that there was a land of nothingness in the North Pole, Wang Ling had in fact already noticed its existence. Because of the other world's limited flavor crispy noodle snacks, they were only available in limited quantities every year. Actually, Wang Ling had resisted the urge to uproot this strange world. Of course, he also clearly knew what on earth these people were planning, whether it was an old ancient divine weapon or a new one. Wang Ling thought that if someone really thought that they could rule the universe with this scrap of metal, that would be a little too whimsical. The truth was that no matter how old or new an ancient divine weapon was, it was impossible for it to withstand the power of one punch from him. Today was his birthday, and it just so happened that the other world's limited edition gear crispy noodle snacks were on sale in this world. It was said that anyone who drew a crispy noodle snack with a golden gear card in its packaging would receive a free pack of neon rainbow crispy noodle snacks. Wang Ling didn't know how much better it tasted than other crispy noodle snacks, but he knew a little about its effects. It was said that as long as you ate neon rainbow crispy noodle snacks for the next few days when you went to the toilet, the stuff in the toilet would also turn a beautiful rainbow color, and it would last for a full 7 days. Limited edition crispy noodle snacks sometimes weren't necessarily sold for flavor, but could also be sold for novelty. Ordinary crispy noodle snacks were no longer able to satisfy Wang Ling's needs. These novelty flavor crispy noodle snacks indeed gave Wang Ling a different feeling. They gave him a sense of satisfaction. Of course, when Wang Ling entered the illusory world of nothingness, he had a disguise. His name in this illusory land of nothingness was a single name, which was the word Jean after the word Ling had been removed. For the bosses of all the game parlors in the core area, this name was an absolute nightmare. Because game parlors were Wang Ling's main source of income in this world's currency. As for An Wan, as long as she was in shadow form, she could stay on Wang Ling's shoulder without anyone noticing. Thus, when Wang Ling put on the white fox mask which he had prepared beforehand and swaggered into one of the game parlors in the Imperial City, almost in a split second, the game parlors went into level 1 alert mode. It's Jean. God, Jean has appeared again. Is he going to smash the boxing machine again today? When the person in charge of the game parlors saw the familiar figure enter the surveillance room, he instantly broke out in a cold sweat. Staring at Wang Ling's figure, he immediately ordered the person next to him, quickly find someone to calm him down, then inform Boss Jia at once and ask him if he has any countermeasures. Didn't the boss go to that underground boxing arena? He came back a long time ago, he's now at the astrology club next door. Good. I'll go ask him right away. Chapter 1664. Illusory Realm, the core area of the Imperial City, in the central hall of the huge ancient castle. An old gentleman wearing a gold-rimmed monocle sat on a dazzling king's chair inlaid with all kinds of beautiful crystals. He held a black scepter in his hands and squinted his eyes into slits, exuding an air of unfathomable depth. The most eye-catching part of his extremely distinctive face was the pitch-black mole at the corner of his mouth. "Your Excellency, the Black Dragon has been captured." But by the time we caught him, he had already killed 3 past commanders. A spherical guard floating in the air entered the palace and reported the current situation in an electronic voice. This matter should not be made public. The previous commanders also had backup bodies. Have they been replaced? Na Wei held onto his scepter and replied indifferently. All of them have been replaced with newly developed antique divine weapon androids. Up until now, the families of these killed commanders still haven't reacted. This matter has been handled beautifully. Na Wei smiled. Shouchong and the Black Dragon are both in place. The merging of the brain of God has been completed. Now we just have to wait for Mr. Na Wei Gong to offer up his body. Have they arrived? Yes, Your Excellency Na Wei. They have already entered Daika's mansion. Immediately send people over and surround the mansion. We must capture Gong alive. Try not to damage her body. Yes, Your Excellency. After making all these arrangements, Na Wei heaved a long sigh of relief on the king's chair. Back then, his master, the heartless ancestor, had divided a portion of his left and right brain tissues. One of them had been implanted into his body when the Black Dragon had been created. The other was in Shouchong's body. After years of painstaking preparation, the brain of God had finally been assembled. This made Na Wei very happy. Of course, there was one thing that made him even happier. He had discovered a body that was more suitable for creating antique divine weapons and mass-producing them. If he could obtain such a body, he could replace the existing materials with the latest bionic technology. His antique divine weapon would be peerless and invincible. Following the address Dekars had given them, Lotus Sun and the others smoothly arrived at D Manor. Back in the slums, Skady had already built and operated this magnificent private mansion in the core area through his connections and channels. It was all for the sake of waiting for the day when he obtained the pass and became a true superior. Then, he could directly move his family into this magnificent mansion. This was the lifelong dream of all lowly people. Although Daikas was different from the ordinary lowly people as he was the most hopeful person among the ascenders in the slums to enter the core area and move to this huge and magnificent imperial city, the ascenders were still classified as lowly in the archive. The only difference was that their assets and connections were incomparable to those of ordinary scums. They belonged to the higher stages of scums. But now, the situation had completely changed. Daikas had finally realized his long-awaited dream. He could live in a large mansion that he had prepared long ago and settle down comfortably in this imperial city. He could have 8 or 10 wives, raise a bunch of cute children, and live the life he wanted. At least, that was what Lotus Sun and Kaguya Ryoko thought when they saw this mansion. But when they actually entered the mansion, it was strangely quiet, which was indeed beyond their expectations. As a powerful ascender, Daikas had already begun to lay out his plans for the interior of the imperial city when he was in the slums. It was impossible that this huge mansion didn't even have a single hired servant. It's a little strange, Rong. In the team voice channel, Kaguya Ryoko couldn't help feeling a little nervous. She tugged at Lotus Sun's cloak and could clearly sense that the atmosphere in the mansion wasn't right. I can sense Mr. D's aura. He should be in this room in front of us. Lotus Sun led the way at the very front. In fact, she also had an ominous premonition. Relying on the powerful passive perception ability of man and sword as one, Mysterious C was able to identify Daikas' aura in this mansion, but it was very weak. It was completely different from the Daikas they had parted ways with on the road leading to the core area. When they arrived at the core area, their first reaction wasn't to complete Zhu Yuanruin's mission and go after the Black Dragon, but to catch up to Daikas as soon as possible because of what Monk Jin Dang had said, to prevent him from getting into danger. But looking at the current situation, Lotus Sun sensed that they were still a step too slow. Although Diecast had left before them, it had only been less than an hour. Mr. D, Lotus Sun knocked on the front door of the inner hall. The door wasn't completely locked, and opened easily with a light knock. After Lotus Sun's call, the deathly silent inner hall emitted a strange and soft whimpering sound. The sound was muffled and couldn't be heard at all. If one didn't listen carefully, they wouldn't even be able to detect it. Feeling extremely uneasy, Lotus Sun finally walked up to a wooden wine barrel hidden at the back of the inner hall. And Diecast's aura. It was inside this wooden barrel. Clenching her teeth, Lotus Sun summoned up her courage and lifted the lid of the barrel. A foul stench immediately hit them in the face. It was an extremely complex and rancid smell, like meat products that had gone bad after being marinated for a long time. Lotus Sun and Ryoko Kiyomiya were dumbfounded. Because an eyeball was looking at them from inside the barrel. Even though she couldn't tell what Diecast looked like, she could still tell that it was Diecast's eye. Mr. D. Lotus Sun's eyes instantly turned red, and she tried to use Mysterious C's healing sword Chi to heal him. But it was already useless. Diecast had been killed long before they had arrived. Such a big guy had been chopped into pieces, and put together with the scattered parts in this wine barrel. This is the calamity he deserves. Healing sword Chi can save people, but it has no effect on the dead. Monk Jin Dang sighed. He made a Buddhist salute to the wooden barrel, and the Buddha's light of rebirth had already condensed in his hand. This beam of light could quickly end Diecast's pain and allow him to enter a new cycle of reincarnation. But before this beam of light, Jin Dang seemed to think of something, and he extracted the almost inaudible whimpers from the wooden barrel. They converged into a short string of words. This was the message of death that Diecast had gathered with his obsession before he was killed. There were only 2 words, run. Perhaps it's because we left the address earlier, and he calculated that we would come looking for him. That's why he left this message. Monk Jin Dang sighed. He spread out his Buddha's hand, which was full of glittering golden light and boundless divine power of the Buddhist Dharma. Mr. D, this little monk and the 2 girls have received your message. Have a safe journey. This little monk has calculated that you will be incomparably happy in your next life. A beam of light of rebirth fell. In the wooden barrel, Diecast turned into golden powder with his last obsession and floated towards the pure land of bliss. After doing all this, he saw the 2 emotional girls with teary eyes, and hurriedly comforted them. Miss Rong, and Miss Ryoko. Right now, the battle isn't over yet. Keep moving forward. He felt that his words couldn't be said to be comforting. Modern cultivators hadn't experienced too many past wars. But without the peace they were used to enjoying, the true path of cultivation was often much crueler than that of modern cultivation. This was a truth that could only be understood after experiencing it for oneself. Touching upon the cycle of life and death, except for that man, no one had the ability to change the outcome that had already been decided. Senior Jin Dang, I understand. Wiping away the tears at the corners of her eyes, she raised her eyes and scanned the surroundings with her spiritual sense. Come out, all of you. I will return Mr. D's pain to you several times over. As soon as she said that, a powerful sword Chi suddenly howled out of Lotus Sun's body. Next to her, Ryoko Kiyomiya was completely shaken in that one breath. Rong Rong. She felt that Lotus Sun had become a different person, or rather, her previous understanding of Lotus Sun was completely incomplete. The sword Chi emanating from her body was too strong. Ryoko Kiyomiya thought that in all her life, she had only felt this kind of awe once, when she had been fortunate enough to meet that extremely famous blade master in Huasho Nation. And now, the sword Chi erupting from Lotus Sun seemed to be even more violent than when she had met Blade Master back then. This was the true fury of a hibiscus. Chapter 1665. More than a dozen chilly auras with boundless coldness twisted indifferently from all directions, and their target was the foyer of the mansion where Lotus Sun was currently. These malevolent spirit energies seemed to be replicas, from their intensity to their smell. They were all exactly the same, which made Lotus Sun immediately determine that these people were very likely to be the new ancient divine weapons that Monk Golden Lamp had mentioned before. Only artificial cultivators with strict standards could have such a consistent sense of harmony. From the aura to the spirit energy to the malice seeping out from within, they were all exactly the same. Kiyomiya Ryoko was terrified. She was not someone who had never seen such a big scene, but the new ancient divine weapons that surrounded them now, even though they were not the final products that had been finalized, each of them had the combat prowess of a quasi-Dao god. Although they weren't at the level of Black Dragon, there were many of them at the moment, and the accumulated malice had a huge impact on Kiyomiya Ryoko, a golden core cultivator. Surrounded by so many battle machines with such a huge disparity in realm, Kiyomiya Ryoko's face immediately turned unsightly. But while she had turned pale, Lotus Sun's face was glowing, and she looked ready to fight. This couldn't help making Kiyomiya Ryoko feel even more bewildered. Wasn't Lotus Sun just at the Foundation establishment stage? Were all Foundation establishment cultivators so brave now? Because she had already become good friends with Lotus Sun, Kiyomiya Ryoko didn't feel ashamed, but just a little incredulous. Could it be that Senior Golden Lamp had also blessed Lotus Sun? Kiyomiya Ryoko thought it over, but the doubt in her heart only grew stronger. After all, Monk Golden Lamp had also blessed her, and she knew what it felt like. It was true that one's body would become stronger after being blessed, but in the face of such a huge gap in realm, the fear of the disparity would still involuntarily surface. When she had been dealing with Black Dragon earlier, Kiyomiya Ryoko's mind had been filled with the scene of Awed Joie and that pretty boy, lovey-dovey. The more she thought about it, the more infuriating it became, and she had no time to think about anything else. But now that they were surrounded by more than a dozen new ancient divine weapons belonging to quasi-Dao gods, the situation had fundamentally changed. Ryoko Kiyomiya was not stupid. Even though she found it inconceivable, she could sense that the sword chi on Lotus Sun's body wasn't from Monk Jin Dang's illumination, but from her own power. At this time, outside the inner hall, a dozen or so shadows appeared in front of them through the hazy window paper. Each of them was wearing the same black uniform, with a very special black hemp rope tied around their waists and a clown mask on their faces. One of them circled to the roof, his eyes releasing a golden light through the holes of the clown mask. "The Lord requests that we capture this Mr. Gong alive. As for the rest, you can kill them." "Yes." At the same time, a cold and gloomy aura shot toward the inner hall, locking onto Lotus Sun almost at the same time. Lotus Sun's heart suddenly turned cold. Fortunately, she had swapped masks with Kiyomiya Ryoko and used Mysterious C's passive ability of becoming one with the sword to simulate Kiyomiya Ryoko's aura with the Fata Morgana illusory aura technique, causing this group of people to lock onto her. "Senior Golden Lamp, protect Yoshiko." "I understand." Jin Dang put his palms together, then stepped forward to protect Kiyomiya Ryoko behind him. He hadn't organized Lotus Sun's operation because it was a rare opportunity for her to gain experience. As a senior, it was very immoral to fight for experience points with a junior. "Thank you, senior." With Monk Jin Dang providing logistical support, Lotus Sun could act without any scruples. Then she looked at Kiyomiya Ryoko and smiled. "Ryoko, I know you have a lot of doubts right now. I'll explain them to you when I get the chance." The situation was urgent, so she only left her with these words. Then she stepped lightly on the ground and soared into the air, breaking through the ceiling with Mysterious C in her hand. Bang! As the rubble was smashed, the girl's figure appeared along with the azure sword chi. Like a hibiscus rising from the water, her body swirled with the aura of the boundless ocean, forming a sword wave that rushed out in all directions. On the roof, Jin Dang clearly hadn't expected that Mr. Gong would choose to take the initiative to fight in the face of such a siege. When the sword chi from Lotus Sun came rushing at him, a contemptuous expression appeared on his face, and he wanted to reach out to block it. But when his hand came into contact with this seemingly unremarkable sword wave, Dang was stunned to discover that it wasn't an ordinary wave at all, but a tempestuous wave. The unexpected impact carried with it a tyrannical force that made his right arm go numb on the spot. Dang's reaction was swift and fierce. His brain had been instilled with a large number of combat techniques, and in the face of such an unexpected and fierce attack, even if he was suspected of underestimating his opponent, it wasn't as if he was completely without a way to remedy it. Under these circumstances, meeting force with force would only cause him to lose an arm in vain, so he very cleverly used the thinking concept of Taiji Fist: receive, transform, release. It looked like he was receiving the attack, but in fact, he was using the power of transforming force, a kind of force that could move 1,000 caddies with little effort, so that the fierce force brought by the sword chi was continuously dispersed from one point in all directions. As long as this force was dispersed, even if his arm was hit by the attack, it wouldn't completely break. Finally, with the sound of bones dislocating, Dang took a step back. Using the combat techniques instilled in his brain, he resisted the trouble caused by underestimating his opponent. In the end, the price he had to pay was just a dislocation. Like most new mystical weapons, they didn't feel pain, so a dislocation didn't seem to affect them at all. With a calm expression, he used his left arm to help twist it, and the right arm was reattached. This person's reaction is very fast. Faced with Dang's swift and fierce reaction, Lotus Sun was amazed after this test move. It's not that his reaction is fast. All the combat experience of a new ancient divine weapon is the same. They're like calculators that can quickly find a way to deal with different moves in the database, Sun Yinger analyzed in Lotus Sun's mind at that moment. So that's how it is. Lotus Sun nodded. She tightened her grip on Mysterious C's arm, a confident expression on her face. If her opponent was fighting her according to a preset program, then the following battle would be very easy. In Lotus Sun's view, the following battle would be very easy to handle. After all, a computer program was still inputted by humans. Even if it had the ability to learn autonomously, if it encountered a problem that didn't appear in the program, it would be difficult for it to react immediately. As the #1 foundation establishment cultivator on Earth, Lotus Sun's logical thinking was extremely clear. Mysterious C, lend me a hand. She called out to Mysterious C in her heart and gradually began to unseal this passive ability of becoming one with the sword. When the aura of the Heavenly Tao magic cube was slowly released from Mysterious C's azure blade, Dang's expression froze once more. Heavenly Tao magic cube. There was actually such a thing. At this moment, he suddenly understood why this girl's sword chi could be so fierce. It was just a Heavenly Tao magic cube. As long as he was careful, he should be able to smoothly complete his plan to capture her alive. But what Dang hadn't expected at all was, after Lotus Sun unsealed the power of the first Heavenly Tao magic cube, this aura actually continued to soar, so there are 2 magic cubes. Dang couldn't help sweating at his temples. Then, the beads of sweat grew denser and denser, almost as if it was raining down, because the number of Heavenly Tao magic cubes he sensed wasn't just 2, there seemed to be more. A few seconds later, Shue's brain had almost stopped working. Before accepting this mission, he had been full of confidence. But now, no matter how unwilling he was to admit it, he had to admit that he was already a little flustered. After all, before this mission, no one had told him that a spirit sword could actually fuse 6 Heavenly Tao magic cubes into it. For Dang, this problem was already a little out of his league. He even had the same question as Kwamiya Ryoko in his mind. Were all Foundation establishment cultivators these days so brave? Chapter 1666. Inside the Mysterious Sea, the divine power of the 6 Heavenly Tao magic cubes was working together, and the superimposed power formed a sword pressure that could be described as crushing, which was unimaginably shocking. It was true that Wang Ling now had the remaining 3 cubes of Dao ancestor Wang's primordial Rubik's Cube, which meant that it was only a matter of time before the mysterious sea would become a genuine, 9-cores spirit sword. But even with 3 missing, the pressure was still enough to make one's hair stand on end. How could this be? Led by Jinan, the leader of this group of new ancient divine weapons, everyone was dumbstruck for a moment, their eyes wide and round, very much like the scene in the first episode of The Deer and the Cauldron when Wei Xiaobao was telling the story. How could a girl who was only at the foundation establishment stage be able to control this spirit sword that had been fused with 6 heavenly Dao magic cubes? At that moment, Jinan realized that his memory was starting to go haywire, because his mind was blank and he couldn't think of a way to deal with this situation at all. The girl with the 6 cores mysterious sea was too powerful. Just by standing there, her body emitted a tsunami of sword pressure, which was as powerful as the end of the world. All of them froze in place and couldn't move a muscle. This was also the first time that Lotus Sun had fully revealed her strongest battle strength in front of outsiders. She hadn't reached such an outrageous level when she had beheaded Old God with her sword earlier, but she was clearly stronger now. No one could have imagined that a foundation establishment cultivator would actually be able to use a spirit sword to boost her battle strength to the level of a monster. That was right. At that moment, in the eyes of these new ancient divine weapons led by Jinan, Lotus Sun was an out-and-out monster. This couldn't go on, they had to think of a way. Watching Lotus Sun approach him step by step, Jinan began to forcibly control his body, which had been stiffened by the sword pressure. At the same time, the new ancient divine weapons below him, who could also be called androids, did the same thing. They were too close to Lotus Sun to be able to move, so they could only forcibly remove their rigidity and then put as much distance between them as possible. But this was a ridiculous and face-slapping action. Because before coming here, Jinan had thought that this would be an extremely easy task. Even though this Mr. Gong was very strong, they had the advantage in numbers. It was not impossible for them to subdue him and bring him back to that lord alive and unharmed. But now, Jin too felt that the situation had completely changed. Listen to my command, set up the formation. As long as he could ensure that Gong Xianqing was alive. Even if he broke his limbs and crippled him. As long as he's alive, we don't need to think about anything else, Jinan ordered. This was an act of helplessness. Originally, they wanted to bring Mr. Gong, alive and unscathed to Na Wei. But now, it was clearly impossible. This was a battle where they had to give it their all. The necessary casualties were unavoidable. Hardly had Jin Tu concluded his sentence when more than 10 golden arrows of spiritual energy darted out of the holes and cut apart the space like waves, plowing black cracks in the void that the arrows passed through. This was the battle prowess of a quasi-Dao god, and tearing apart space was a common occurrence. These golden arrows flashed through the void at a speed invisible to the naked eye with terrifying power. Dragging along hideous spatial cracks, they were poignant yet gorgeous as they shot toward Lotus Sun from multiple directions. If these powerful spiritual energy arrows collided with the roof, the huge explosion would instantly raze the mansion to the ground. Lotus Sun stood on the roof. Mysterious Sea's sword chi had already completely covered the entire imperial city, and she could clearly sense the positions of these dozen androids, including the barrier that they had deliberately set up around the mansion before coming here. This was to prevent accidents like this from happening when they attacked, and the impact of the explosion would spread elsewhere. But this was actually helping Lotus Sunday. She stood solemnly in place. With Mysterious Sea's sword chi protecting her body and the eternal illumination spell that Monk Jin Dang had cast on her during the Yin and Yang death calamity incident, the strength of her body had reached an incredible level. Buzz! Mysterious Sea's protective sword chi was automatically released, forming an eggshell-shaped sword barrier with a radius of 8 feet. These golden arrows that came from all directions couldn't even break through the sword barrier in the end. When they were within 8 feet of Lotus Sun, it was as if time had stopped and they were frozen in the air, unable to move forward even half a step. And then, a horrifying scene occurred. These golden arrows with tremendous energy were actually swallowed up by Lotus Sun's protective sword chi. Like a clay ox falling into the sea, they fell into the boundless and deep ocean, and were quickly submerged without a trace. At this moment, Jinan's mind went blank once again. He looked at Lotus Sun's emotionless face, and as he was shaken by this sight, he also sensed the girl's gaze. It was a kind of contempt that completely looked down on them. "Looks like it's my turn now," the girl said. At this moment, Mysterious Sea's sword was already filled with a mysterious azure color. It was sparkling and translucent, and it was incomparably brilliant. It had the depth of the boundless ocean, and at the same time, it was exuding a boundless aura of life. Devastatingly beautiful sword. She spoke indifferently, and with an extremely graceful and beautiful body, she brandished the azure sword and drew a circle around herself. The last time she had used this powerful, devastatingly beautiful sword was when Mysterious Sea and Bai Qiao had fused together. But now, because Mysterious Sea had 6 heavenly Dao magic cubes, this devastatingly beautiful sword had already become her most common skill. The only difference was that last time, it had been a straight slash. She had slashed out sword chi over 10,000 meters. But this time, it was a circular sword chi that slashed out around her. It was like a gorgeous waltz, and the moment it was unleashed, it made people's scalps go numb. Of course, she had even more powerful moves, such as the devastatingly beautiful sword or the devastatingly beautiful sword, but if she used these 2 more powerful moves now, Lotus Sun was a little worried that the barrier that these people had set up around the mansion would be directly shattered by her move, and the innocent residents would be affected. Rumble. The circular sword chi of the devastatingly beautiful sword rushed out, carrying with it a supersonic sound wave that even a Dao god's hearing couldn't hear as it slashed out in all directions. The 16 androids, including Jean too, looked horrified. For each and every one of them, this was completely out of their league. It wasn't something they could deal with. Even their battle strength wasn't on the same level. Although they were androids that had been created and were just tools to follow orders, they also cherished their lives. After realizing that they had completely underestimated this Mr. Gong's battle strength, everyone's first thought was to retreat. But Mysterious Sea's sword chi was really too fast. It swept out in all directions, sweeping away 1,000 enemies. Just as the 16 androids were about to retreat, their line of sight suddenly tilted. It turned out that their heads had already been separated from their bodies, 16 quasi-Dao God-level heads. In that instant, they all fell to the ground. Chapter 1667. There was no blood, only the stench of oil flowing across the air, very much like the feeling when refueling a car at a gas station. In the face of the sudden devastatingly beautiful sword, Jean too, and the group of androids on the ground had no time to react, and their heads fell to the ground one after another. As androids, their insides were all created with high-precision machinery, so even if their heads were separated from their bodies, they wouldn't die immediately. Of course, if it was an ordinary decapitated head, with their regenerative ability, they could completely control their bodies to pick up the head and reattach it. However, it was a pity that the young girl was more cautious than they had imagined. When the sword chi from the alluring sword swept over, it directly destroyed the sensory nerves in their bodies, causing the mental connection between their heads and their bodies to be completely severed. Right now, they were completely isolated and helpless. Of course, Lotus Sun's caution was far more than that. At this moment, she took another step forward and stabbed Mysterious Sea into the ground. A huge vortex formed in the field and accurately locked onto the 16 fragmented bodies here. One body after another uncontrollably gathered from all directions due to the suction force of the vortex. Then, they were sucked into the vortex, just like fruits that were sucked into a juicer. In an instant, they were smashed into pieces and turned into dust. Thus, in less than a few seconds, the bodies of Jean 2 and the others also disappeared, leaving only their round heads. It was only now that Jean 2 realized what kind of devil he had offended. Too cruel, why was there such a terrifying guy? Mr. Dykes, did you kill him? Answer me honestly, or I'll get angry. At this moment, Lotus Sun leaned over and stared at Jean 2's head. Jean 2 sweated. Yes, very good. Seeing Jean 2 directly admit it, Lotus Sun immediately nodded. For every debt, there was a debtor. As a veteran, Naoki Sawa, Lotus Sun understood the principle of an eye for an eye. Using another, mobile version of the Vortex Attraction spell, Lotus Sun gathered all the 16 heads together and hovered behind her like the truth-seeking ball in some cartoon. If she had to describe it, this scene reminded Ryoko of a hero named Syndra in the League of Legends. Monk Jin Deng understood. He knew what Lotus Sun wanted to do, so he took a step forward and opened the huge wine barrel that contained Daikas's body. The remnant body inside had already been successfully transcended by Monk Jin Deng, leaving nothing behind. Monk Jin Deng put his palms together, his face full of Buddhist light and benevolence. Amitabha, without another word, Lotus Sun threw the gathered heads one by one into the wine barrel. The Golden Bear android was the last to be thrown in. Seeing that Lotus Sun was about to close the lid, he immediately panicked. You, what are you doing? And the one with the Buddha's light over there. You monks are not compassionate. To deliver all living beings from suffering. Jin Dang looked up at Jin Nu and said, those with souls are living beings. You don't even have souls, so what kind of living beings are you? These words caused Jin to be speechless. They thought they were humans, but in reality, they were just machines with a certain level of artificial intelligence created by Na Wei. Was it sad? Maybe a little bit, that was what she thought. At that moment, Monk Jin Deng's heart was also in turmoil. He felt that Lotus Sun had always been a kind girl, but when it came to major issues, she was more clear about gratitude and grudges than he had imagined, and had the air of a chivalrous woman. This made him a little happy, and he felt that Lotus Sun had really matured a lot. Rong, what on earth? At that moment, the only person at the scene who was dumbfounded was Jamiya Ryoko. She felt like she was on the verge of breaking down. She couldn't understand why Lotus Sun had suddenly become so strong, and so ridiculously strong. Ryoko, I didn't mean to hide it from you. So did Senior Ajwa. I've always told him not to tell you. Anyway, this is a good opportunity, so why don't we let him explain it to you? Lotus Sun took Jamiya Ryoko's hand and said. She then looked outside the hall. Senior Ajwa, you're here, right? Don't hide outside, I sensed you a long time ago. Ajwa, who was hiding underground by a haystack outside the house, couldn't help sighing. What was meant to come would always come, because Jamiya Ryoko had always thought that Wang Ling was her disciple. He felt that this wonderful misunderstanding was actually pretty good. At the very least, it could help explain a lot of things. Of course, Ajwa was also well aware that the truth couldn't be hidden forever. He and Jamiya Ryoko had already established their relationship, and they planned to continue this path in the future, so he had to take this step in the end. Even though he was a little surprised by the way things had developed, but now, Ajwa felt that it was time for him to act like a man and explain everything to Jamiya Ryoko. On the other side a few minutes ago, Wang Ling was playing with a gold coin bulldozer in the game hall of the Imperial City. He was holding a coin, and his hands suddenly paused in the air. He could sense the fluctuations of sword chi from Lotus Sun's alluring sword. It seemed that a fight had already broken out over there. Furthermore, it was a crushing blow. Wang Ling didn't know why he had suddenly paid attention to the situation over there while he was playing the game. But after learning that Lotus Sun's side was progressing smoothly, he felt a lot more at ease, and then turned his attention back to the gold coin bulldozer in front of him. This was already the 16th gold coin bulldozer that Wang Ling had emptied. The game coins that Wang Ling had earned were piled up into 3 full sacks. There were as many as 100,000 of them. According to the game hall's calculations, these 100,000 game coins could all be converted into gold gear coins at a 1:10 exchange rate. There were actually quite a few throwing techniques for playing the gold coin bulldozer, and Wang Ling's technique was to attach a magnetic force to the coin that was being thrown as he threw it. As a result, as soon as the coin entered the bulldozer, no matter where it was, it would immediately form an avalanche and push all the game coins out of the bulldozer. Mr. Jean, do you still want to continue? The first few machines that have been emptied have already been filled with new game coins. The person in charge of the game hall wiped his cold sweat and stood respectfully next to Wang Ling. His immediate superior was Jia Bugue. Usually, whenever Wang Ling appeared in the game hall, Jia Bugue would tremble in fear and reprimand them for using all sorts of methods to get rid of Wang Ling. Like the owners of other video game halls, almost all of them who had been robbed by Wang Ling suffered from a disease that made them twitch uncontrollably at the sight of Wang Ling, commonly known as the godly Jinshan disease. The person in charge had thought that Jia Bugue's attitude would be the same as before. But who knew that when he went to report today, Boss Jia seemed to be in an exceptionally good mood. Not only did he not stop him, he even sent someone to play with this Mr. Jean to his heart's content. The most outrageous thing was that this play had no limits. Jia Bugue had already given him an order. Even if Wang Ling swept away all the game coins in his game hall today, even if the game hall directly closed down and lost everything, he would still play with him. When the person in charge of the game hall heard this, he was dumbfounded on the spot. Boss, are you serious? Just a few minutes ago on the phone, he confirmed with Jia Bugue again. Little did he know that Jia Bugue, who had picked up the phone, said righteously, "Of course I'm serious." After all, this was his little brother's birthday. If his little brother wanted to play, of course he would play with him. In any case, even if the game hall closed down, it wasn't his money that was being spent. Chapter 1668. When the news of the death of the 16 neo-ancient mystical armaments, led by Jean II, was transmitted to Na Wei's brain through the mental connection hub, he felt a slight tingling sensation. This tingling sensation had no effect on the body itself, and it merely expressed a signal that the mental connection hub had been completely disconnected. This meant that the 16 quasi-Dao God neo-ancient mystical armaments, led by Jean II, were completely hopeless. The material of the neo-ancient mystical armaments was very special, and it had the ability to regenerate. Under normal circumstances, even if it was severely damaged, it could still be salvaged. Even if a part of its body was lost and its regenerative ability was restricted, as long as there was more than 30% of its mechanical tissue left, it could still survive. In other words, as long as there was at least 30% of its mechanical tissue left, it would not be to the point where the mental connection hub was directly disconnected. Na Wei's face was filled with disbelief. He did not expect that the combined combat power of Jean II and the others he had sent would not be able to defeat that Gong. However, this made him feel even more excited. This proved that his judgment was right. This Mr. Gong was indeed a good material for him to further realize the ultimate version, neo-ancient mystical armament. Of course, the defeat of Jean II and the others also made Na Wei reflect. He felt that in terms of battle prowess, Jean II and the others should not be crushed. Perhaps it had something to do with the order he had given them at the beginning, to bring back Mr. Gong alive. It caused Jean II and the others to be restrained when they made their move, allowing the other party to find an opportunity. From the looks of it, there seemed to be no need to be restrained anymore. Back then, his master, the Heartless Patriarch, was in existence that was worshipped as the underworld's soul chaser. Even a dead person could be saved within 48 hours with his uncanny mechanical parts. Of course, it would be best if he could be captured alive, as that would save Na Wei a lot of trouble. However, there was no need for that now. pass down my order. At this moment, Na pondered for a moment and said to the spherical guards in front of him, I want to release the containment device. This order stunned the ball-shaped guards, because this was a very dangerous move. They needed Na to give another order to confirm the procedure. A spherical guard issued a warning with an electronic voice, release containment command detected. This command may lead to unpredictable danger. The containment creatures are currently in an uncontrollable state. Under this castle, there were countless strange creatures that had been taken in. In order to conduct experiments on the ancient divine weapon, the Wuxin clan patriarch had forcefully imprisoned them in a specific Rubik's Cube container. They were strange, powerful, and had certain weaknesses, but they could not be completely killed, I know. Na smiled and said, there has been no way to deal with these guys effectively. Mr. Na Gong is so strong, so he must have a way to deal with them, right? Borrow his hand to make those living beings consume a portion of their physical strength, and at the same time, wear down his own strength. In the end, send out the new neo-ancient divine armaments to surround him, and he will definitely be brought to me. At this point, the spherical guards already knew what Na wanted to do. It was nothing more than exhausting each other's physical strength, and in the end, reaping the benefits of a third party. However, it was hard to say whether it would be so smooth in practice. This was because the abilities of those creatures were strange and abnormally cruel. Not only were they not easy to control, they could easily harm innocent people. However, Na seemed to be particularly confident about this. It's fine. That Mr. Gong seems to be a warm-hearted person. To deal with such a warm-hearted person, it would be more interesting to leave these uncertain factors in the past. Even if something really happens to someone, at most, we'll just lose money. For the future development of the Imperial City, sometimes necessary sacrifices are needed. Then how do you want to release the creatures? Directly use the teleportation technique to send the Rubik's Cube that is used to contain them over. Of course, set up the automatic release program before sending it over. Understood. At this moment, the spherical guard's light flickered, and immediately projected the light from its mechanical eyes. Accompanied by the constantly jumping numbers in the void, a series of information about the creatures and the corresponding containment number were clearly projected in the void. The spherical guard said, Sir, please choose which of the creatures to release first. Na rubbed his chin and chuckled. SCP-096, let's activate it for now. SCP-096 was an ancient Dao God realm creature, and its current realm strength had reached the quasi-Dao ancestor realm. This was a strange fellow that his Shifu, the heartless ancestor, had captured on the back of the moon in ancient times. It was a rabbit in human form, but because it had a pair of rabbit buck teeth, it had a strong sense of inferiority. It usually covered its mouth, only revealing those beautiful ruby-like eyes. It looked like a gentle, refined, and extremely gentlemanly creature, but when it got violent, it wouldn't even recognize its own family. None of those who had seen its buck teeth had survived. Back then, Na had come into contact with SCP-096 a lot in order to study the structure of the ancient divine weapon's teeth. SCP-096 had almost killed him several times by using its buck teeth to bite through his throat. Now that he had released SCP-096 again, Na had to admit that it actually felt a little like he was abusing his position to avenge a personal grudge. Are you sure you want to release the creatures contained in SCP-096, also known as Material Pack Number 096? Yes. Very well, the system understands. After a countdown of 120 seconds, it will be transported to the designated coordinates. In the game hall, Wang Ling emptied the last gold coin bulldozer, and was perfectly satisfied as he used the 200,000 game coins he had just won to exchange for 20,000 gold gear coins. He wasn't an insatiable person, and from the very beginning, he hadn't intended to use up all of the game hall's capital. He just needed to save enough money to buy crispy noodle snacks. Take care, Lord Jean. With tears in his eyes, the person in charge of the game hall respectfully sent Wang Ling off with his workers at the door. With a wave of his sleeve, he was deeply moved by Wang Ling's leniency, and even welcomed him to come again next time. Wang Ling was very satisfied with this. He felt that this game hall had a lot of future prospects. As one of his ATMs in this world, Wang Ling felt that as long as the Imperial City continued to operate, places like the game hall had to be preserved. Of course, he wouldn't just fleece one place. If the sheep went bald, he wouldn't be able to make any money. The Wang family's teachings had always told him that he couldn't use his abilities to make money in the real world. Wang Ling naturally remembered this family teaching. But the place he was in now was not the real world, but an alternate world. Thus, this couldn't be considered a violation. He was about to go to the snack store that Xiang Yi had opened in this other world to buy crispy noodle snacks. Just as he was less than 500 meters from the entrance of the snack store, there was suddenly an earth-shattering noise. An 8-meter-long and 8-meter-wide cube fell from the sky like a meteor from a strange angle, smashing the snack store into smithereens on the spot. Wang Ling had seen this scene before. Just 7 years ago, it had been the same scene when the gate between worlds had descended. In the end, it had happened just as he was buying snacks. Chapter 1669. When the huge cube with a metallic luster and full of technological feeling appeared on the streets of the downtown area, the spherical guardian immediately issued an abnormal warning. Because there was a difference between the location it was sent to and the actual location it appeared in, this shouldn't have happened. What the hell is going on? Na Wei frowned in displeasure. He had wanted to send the cube precisely in front of Lotus Sun and the others, but he hadn't expected it to be sent directly to the downtown area. Now the situation had become troublesome, and it looked like a lot of people were going to die. Abnormal energy fluctuations of SCP-096 detected. Initial suspicion is that the containment device gave 096 a certain amount of spiritual energy space after leaving the suppression array, allowing it to use its own ability to teleport the entire cube to another location, resulting in a deviation in coordinates. Sure enough, it's become stronger. Na Wei rubbed his chin and sneered. No matter, let's not worry about it for now. Just release another containment creature that doesn't have the ability to teleport in front of Mr. Gong. Release another one. I think SCP-1212 isn't bad, Na Wei said. SCP-1212, Chinese name, Mute. Ability Analysis, will launch a sudden attack on all objects that make a sound within its hearing range, using its sharp claws to slit open its stomach. It is a strange humanoid creature with mantis hands and a bloody mouth full of sharp teeth on its head. Just looking at it gives off a strong sense of oppression. All people who come into direct contact with it will involuntarily make sounds of ABA ABA. Even the words ABA ABA will constantly appear in their minds, making it impossible for them to think. Whenever someone hears the word ABA 100 times in its vicinity, it will automatically obtain a life and revive immediately after death. According to Na Wei's understanding of SCP-1212, it had accumulated at least 1,260,000 lives over the years. In other words, it would have to be killed at least 1,260,000 times before it would be completely destroyed. Na Wei couldn't wait to see what kind of chemical reaction would occur when this Mr. Gong met 1212. Moreover, there was a certain chance that 1212 would meet 096 this time. In the previous experiments with containment creatures, these two had never met face to face. If they were to fight, it might provide a breakthrough academic contribution to his research on the ultimate version of the neo-archaic mystical weapon. At this moment, the spherical guardian issued another confirmation command. Are you sure you want to liberate the host of SCP-1212? Also known as Source Pack 1212. I'm sure. Alright, the system understands. We will be teleported to the designated coordinates in 120 seconds. On the other side, when a huge cube with a metallic luster and a strong sense of technology appeared on the streets of the downtown area, Wang Ling and little girl Nguyen, who had been lying on his shoulder all this time, immediately sensed the strange creature inside the cube. At the scene, the debris caused by the collapse of the building splashed in all directions, raising a large amount of dust. At the same time, the terrified voices of passers-by could be heard. Everyone fled, completely unaware of the situation. Hands in his pockets, Wang Ling trembled slightly as he stood in front of the collapsed snack shop. Now, he finally understood what the internet meant by shivering with anger. The flying debris didn't hit Wang Ling, who was protected by a powerful holy light. This was an ability that came with his sage body, which could be activated automatically when he was unconscious and could block all flying spells or props that got close to him. Although Wang Nguyen's body was also strong, it wasn't as strong as Wang Ling's. Worried that little girl Nguyen would be hurt, he expanded the holy light around him to envelop her as well. The brother and sister pair worked well together. Wang Ling was completely focused on little girl Nguyen, who used the power of her shadow Dao to control all the flying debris and prevent it from hurting nearby innocent passers-by. What on earth is going on outside? The snack shop they were in wasn't far from the astrology club. When he saw the huge cube land, grenade-throwing Senior Immortal frowned deeply. Danger. This cube was very dangerous. Although he didn't know what on earth was inside, based on his years of courting death, the creature sealed inside this cube definitely wasn't something from the mundane world. It's a shelter, Xiang Yi said at that moment. He had already unzipped his sniper rifle pouch and was rapidly assembling the Nine-Yang Divine Sword, according to my investigation, in order to nurture a top-notch new ancient divine weapon. According to my investigation, the Heartless Patriarch had a habit of capturing strange extraterrestrial creatures back then. Each of these creatures had unique skills, and couldn't be killed so easily using ordinary cultivation methods. Therefore, they can only be imprisoned in this kind of cubic sealing container in this form of seal. Then what on earth are they? It doesn't feel like they're divine beasts born from chaos. Loopy Toad frowned. Ever since it had learned about the existence of that divine marmot back then, Loopy Toad himself had evolved into a divine beast. If the creature in the cube was also a divine beast born from chaos, or had evolved to that level in the later stages, it would definitely resonate with Loopy Toad. But now, this resonance was almost zero. Divine beasts aren't the only creatures born from chaos, there's also a certain chance that alien beasts of chaos will be born. These alien beasts of chaos are also called indescribable creatures. Indescribable creatures. Are these creatures related to the outer gods and the great old ones? Perhaps. That's all I know at the moment. At the very least, there are some indescribable creatures related to the great old ones and the outer gods. As for the others, they're just creatures born from a mixture of great Tao and the power of chaos, said Xiang Yi. I see. Loopy Toad nodded. He more or less understood. That was to say, the unified name for these creatures was indescribable creatures, but they were divided into two factions. One faction was the Great Old Days faction, which was born from the combination of chaos and some of the outer gods and the cells of the Great Old Ones. The other faction was the Great Tao faction, which was born from the combination of the power of the Great Tao and chaos. At that moment, the Nine-Yang Divine Sword in his hand had already been completely assembled. He adjusted the 3.2 billion light-year scope on the sword and nodded with satisfaction. To avoid harming the innocent, it's better to kill these alien beasts of chaos as soon as possible. No need. With that person here, this guy shouldn't be able to jump around for long. At that moment, Wang Ming stretched out his hand to stop Xiang Yi from trying to perform a headshot. Xiang Yi, who's here? Wang Ming smiled. Who else could it be? Loopy Toad was alarmed. Could it be Lord F***K? I was wondering why I kept feeling his aura up ahead. It wasn't because I missed him so much that I was hallucinating. Actually, he had wanted to say earlier whether Wang Ling had also come to this alternate world, but he hadn't been very sure. It wasn't until he saw this incomparably familiar scene in front of him that he had the answer in his heart. 7 years ago, he had also crushed a small store, and then by a freak combination of factors, he had turned from a toad into a dog. Who knew what would happen to this rabbit man who had also crushed a small store? At that moment, everyone in Battle's sect and the astrology club was paying close attention to the battle in front of them. They saw Wang Ling slowly walk toward the rabbit that had already escaped the containment container. Loopy Toad rubbed its nose. Why do I smell unwanted scent on Lord? It was sure that it hadn't smelled wrong. The baby's milk scent was still very obvious. Little girl Nguyen is indeed here, on his shoulder, said Wang Ming. So she's Ling Jinren's little sister? She's too small, won't she be in danger? Xiang Yi was a little worried. He knew who Wang Ling was, but didn't know anything about Wang Nguyen. In his original world, he and Wang Nguyen hadn't interacted at all. Judging from its appearance, this should be the rabbit man from 091. It has an extremely strong self-healing ability, and will kill anyone who sees its buck teeth, Xiang Yi added. As soon as he said that, a scene that no one had expected happened. Suddenly, little girl Nguyen shouted, "Rabbit! Bunny!" Then, he jumped off Wang Ling's shoulder and flew toward the rabbit man. Faced with Wang Nguyen flying toward it, the rabbit man was also caught off guard. It had been born on the far side of the moon 4 billion years ago, and had never seen such a daring human, and there was actually a baby among them. A look of disbelief and fear appeared in 091's eyes. When Wang Nguyen's breath neared him, bringing with it the scent of milk as she rode on his neck, 091's mind was suddenly shaken to a halt. This familiar feeling, at that moment, 091's beautiful ruby-like eyes were filled with tears. Master! 091 let go of the hand that had been covering its buck teeth due to its suicide, and spoke faintly with tears in its eyes. Wang Ling had wanted to kill 091 with a karate chop. In the end, when he saw this scene, he instantly felt relieved. Because 4 billion years ago, he had indeed used the great Dao ability of Shadow Dao in the Heaven's Eye Cliff of the Palm. Thus, the birth of 091 was also related to him. Because he had used Shadow Dao in advance back then. It had caused Wang Nguyen's Shadow Dao to react with chaos. And on the far side of the moon, 091 was born. Chapter 1670. When the rabbit codenamed 096 revealed a moved expression with tears in its eyes, Wang Nguyen also spoke. The white and soft fur on the rabbit's body climbed all the way up to her shoulders, and she used her small hands to pull 096's ears as if she was pulling on a rein. 096 didn't feel the slightest bit of pain from this tugging. Instead, it felt very comfortable. It had waited for 4 billion years to find the value and meaning of its existence. Even if it had never seen Wang Nguyen before, its ability to resonate with the master of Shadow Dao wasn't fake. 096 quickly realized that the baby riding on its shoulders and tugging on its ears was the master it had been searching for all this time, and the meaning of its existence in this world. And so, at that very moment, 096, who had never smiled and had always been one-sidedly silent in sorrow, suddenly revealed its buck teeth confidently and smiled like never before. When Xiang Yi saw this scene in the astrology club, he was completely stupefied. That wasn't right. Weren't these hosts supposed to be savage and inhumane monsters? Why were they smiling as if they had seen Ku Xian's birthday? There was clearly something wrong with this scene. It could only be said that as expected of Ling Jinren's little sister, after sharing the same bloodline, there were always things that exceeded common sense. Very quickly, Xiang Yi began to feel at ease, and felt that he had been a little too inexperienced. Grenade throwing Senior Immortal. So, this 096 is from the Great Dao School. A creature born of Shadow Dao. Loopy Toad sweated. That seems to be the case. This rabbit's aura is very strong. I didn't expect it to actually be one of us. This result was also beyond Wang Ling's expectations. The seed that had been sown 4 billion years ago had only now been reclaimed. After witnessing all the changes in the world, Wang Ling was actually a little moved when he carefully savored it, and couldn't help but cry at this point. When he saw Wan playing with the rabbit's ear happily, his heart softened. Although the rabbit had crushed his snack stand and interrupted his plan to buy snacks, Wan's heart softened. Although this rabbit had crushed his snack stand and disrupted his plan to buy snacks, as long as little girl Wan liked it, it was the same as picking up a death exemption gold medal. After all, this was his little sister, and his own little sister at that. What could he do? Since his little sister liked it, he could only spoil her. Of course. If one day Wang Wan lost interest in 096, 096's life would be in danger. Maybe he would be turned into a spicy rabbit head. Wang Ling could see that 096 was very strong. Although it had lived for 4 billion years, the truth was that a considerable part of that time had been spent in the containment facility. In other words, the meat wasn't as old as it looked, and it wouldn't taste bad when cooked. Just as Wang Ling was pondering whether to make 096 into a dish in the future, whether he should braise it, steam it, or make it spicy, 096, which had been exceptionally obedient as Wan held its 2 rabbit ears, suddenly turned in one direction with an ominous glint in its eyes and a look of extreme hostility. Is there another one? Wang Ling mumbled in his heart. Not far away, a new cubic containment vessel descended along with a deafening roar. 096 was giving out a low warning growl in that direction. At the same time, Wan did indeed search the fluffy fur on its head. In an instant, it felt as if its bones had gone limp, causing 096's body to soften. Another one. Loopy Toad said warily in the astrology club. It didn't know if it was an illusion, but it felt that the containment vessel in this cube was more ferocious than 096. From the looks of it, it should be 1212, Xiang Yi said with a frown. Of all the containment vessels that the heartless patriarch had captured, 1212 was clearly one of the younger generation, but because of its special abilities, it was also an existence that couldn't be underestimated. Don't panic. With Senior Golden Lamp there, I don't think anything will happen. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal was unperturbed. So far, the mastermind behind the scenes of Imperial City hadn't made a move, and instead had released this dangerous containment vessel as the vanguard. Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal couldn't help feeling that there was a hidden danger inside. We can't blindly adopt a defensive posture. Are there any brothers willing to go directly to the castle with me to take a look? Grenade-throwing Senior Immortal said after thinking for a long time. I agree with Senior Immortal. At that moment, Loopy Toad took the initiative to step forward. Then Senior Immortal and this Elder Toad will go to the castle, and Mr. Ming and I will provide long-range support. As Xiang Yi spoke, he stroked the 9-yang divine sword, which had just been assembled. Have you chosen a sniping spot? Wang Ming asked Xiang Yi. No need, just here is fine. But shouldn't a sniper choose the best angle to shoot from? In theory, that's right, but I don't use the 9-yang divine sword. Not only can I see through things, my bullets can also turn. On the other side, at the location of Daika's mansion, along with the landing of a huge cube, a humanoid monster covered in black hair with an indistinct face slowly stepped out of the containment device. It was almost an instinctive reaction, and Jua immediately shielded Kyuya Ryoko behind him. He had wanted to tell Kyuya Ryoko the truth, but hadn't expected danger to descend once again at this critical juncture. Ryoko, I'm sorry. Let's solve the problem in front of us first, okay? I'll tell you everything after that, Jua said. Hearing this, Kyuya Ryoko's expression didn't change, but at least it was a lot more relaxed than before, because Audra instinctively shielded her behind him. In terms of boyfriend power, this was a plus. It was just that because of her hostility toward Shinzong, Kyuya Ryoko's expression didn't change much. Of course, Shinzong could also see that Kyuya Ryoko misunderstood him, but this wasn't the time to explain things. Wang Mingdo's voice rang out in awed joie and the others' minds almost at the same time as 1212's descent, and they immediately understood what was going on. Looks like it's still coming for me. Lotus Sun sighed. Judging from the information Wang Ming had shared, this containment creature clearly wasn't easy to deal with, and was a very troublesome one. At that moment, 1212's massive body was outlined in a cloud of smoke, and it gave off an unusually dangerous aura. Leave it to me, Ryoko. Audra grit his teeth and walked forward with his gun. Brother Joie, be careful, Shinzong reminded him from the side. In the end, no one had expected that his warning would cause Kyuya Ryoko to explode. Her mood had just eased a little when Shinzong provoked her again. She stomped her foot in anger and roared at him, You pervert who likes men. I've put up with you for a long time. Shinzong, ? As soon as he said that, Kyuya Ryoko rushed forward and tried to slap Shinzong. Sister-in-law, calm down. Brother Chin isn't like what you think. Zhou Zi reacted quickly in this situation. His peacemaker nature made him instinctively want to step forward to stop her, but Kyuya Ryoko's slap just so happened to land on his back. And then, there was no then. Since the effect of Kyuya Ryoko's blessing hadn't ended, this slap was extremely powerful, and it actually became a huge boost on the spot. There was a loud bang. A firm slap landed on Zhou Zi's back, causing him to instantly transform into an advanced humanoid missile. Then, he turned into a beam of light and shot forward. He shot forward with the indestructible physical strength of his 5-piece long johns, which looked like Michelin tires. He crashed headfirst into 1212 in the smoke. Chapter 1671. The development of things was beyond everyone's expectations, or rather, the effect of Jimiya Ryoko's slap was beyond everyone's expectations. Due to the effect of Monk Jin Deng's enlightening technique, Jimiya Ryoko's attributes in all aspects had exceeded her realm. It could be said that she had ascended to a higher level. This slap was a slap blessed by the most holy Buddhist teachings, and it was extremely powerful. It was enough to physically transcend all people under the progenitor realm. However, when this slap hit Zhou Zi, who was wearing 5 layers of long johns, this directly produced a very magical scientific physical reaction. That was, the effect of force was mutual. When this powerful slap fell on Zhou Zi's back, because the effect of force is mutual, the power of the long johns immediately released a backlash power that quickly fell on Jimiya Ryoko's slap. But because the effect of force is mutual, when the backlash power hit the slap, it produced a new backlash power. Then, because the effect of force is mutual, the new backlash power transmitted by Jimiya Ryoko fell on the long johns again, and so on, over and over again. Just a few seconds after Jimiya Ryoko came into contact with Zhou Zi, due to the interaction of force, the backlash power repeatedly jumped back and forth, directly forming an explosive propelling force. At that moment, Zhou Zi appeared out of nowhere, let him turn into light. In an instant, Zhou Zi, who had shot out, hit 1212's abdomen on the spot, pushing forward with a destructive force. At the moment of impact, 1212's soul shook violently. Although his reaction was very fast, almost at the moment when Zhou Zi's head hammered down, he reached out his hand to try to resist Zhou Zi's impact. However, he never thought that a Foundation establishment cultivator would have such powerful destructive power. His 2 arms melted on the spot the moment they came into contact with each other. Zhou entire body was surging with the recoil of the long johns, the crimson recoil force, and the Buddhist holy light produced by the influence of the light consecration spell. These two forces did not cancel each other out because of their mutual influence, but instead became stronger and stronger under the influence of each other. The sudden surprise made 1212 lose his left and right arms in an instant. The holy Buddhist light was like two bundles of whips, drilling into 1212's body through the wounds the moment his arms collapsed. This kind of destructive and lethal power could no longer be stopped. 1212 gritted his teeth. He did not expect to be targeted as soon as he was revived. His life was definitely not going to be spared. Therefore, he could only think of a way to stop Zhou during the last moments of his life. Damn it, these wretched cultivators must die. As the representative of the great old era faction of the indescribable creatures, at this moment, 1212's hatred for everyone had almost reached its limit. It swore in its heart that it would kill all these human scum in the cruelest way possible. It wanted this group of people to live and suffer the greatest pain. It wanted them to clearly see their stomachs being cut open and their intestines being torn apart bit by bit. Then, it would devour them until nothing was left. In the last moments of its life, 1212 used its own power of hatred to detonate itself, using the huge explosion impact to force Zhou to stop his human missile behavior. As for himself, he had been smashed into pieces. However, 1212 did not die just like that. It had at least 1,200,000 lives. Forget being blown to pieces, even if it was reduced to ashes, it could quickly come back to life. His body finally came to a stop. Zhou rubbed his head. He had no idea what had happened, and only felt that he had moved a very long distance after receiving Kamiya Ryoko's slap. When his body finally came to a stop, he was completely unscathed, except for a little bit of smoke caused by the tremendous air friction. A small team led by Audiobook and Lotus Sun quickly arrived. Seeing that 1212 had been turned into cannon fodder by Zhou as soon as it appeared, Audiobook grinned from ear to ear. Not bad. Little Wingsy. You did a meritorious deed. Well done. Audiobook had originally brought Zhou to the illusory land of nothingness with the intention of helping Zhou do a meritorious deed, but he hadn't expected his wish to be fulfilled so quickly. On the other hand, Zhou was still in a state of confusion. He had no idea what was going on. Kamiya Ryoko had an apologetic expression on her face. Given her usual temperament, she was never someone who would apologize right away, and would definitely use that roundabout way to express her apologies. But just now, she realized that she had really been wrong. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hit you, Kamiya Ryoko said as she bowed. It's fine, sister-in-law. Zhou rubbed his head and laughed bitterly. By the way, sister-in-law, what I wanted to say is that there really isn't anything going on between Brother Qinzong and Audiobook, and Brother Qinzong has a wife. Zhou had actually learned about this by chance when he had been chatting with Qinzong not long ago. Hearing this, Kamiya Ryoko instantly blushed and wished she could dig a hole and bury herself in it. Heavens, what had she done? She had actually suspected that Qinzong was a pervert who liked men. I'm sorry, I was wrong. Thus, Kamiya Ryoko turned around and apologized to Qinzong. She was really too ashamed. It's fine, it was just a misunderstanding. Qinzong gave her his trademark smile. In fact, he wasn't angry at Kamiya Ryoko's misunderstanding at all, on the contrary, he thought this jealous feeling was a little cute. Young girls in love were probably all the same, they always liked to let their imagination run wild, and problems would arise as they thought about it. But now was clearly not the time to let one's imagination run wild. Because 1212 was still alive. And right in front of them, it had already finished reassembling. It was only then that everyone clearly saw what 1212 looked like. It was a strange humanoid creature with praying mantis hands and a bloody mouth filled with sharp teeth. Just looking at it gave people a horrifying feeling. According to the information provided by Mr. Zhaoming, we'll have to kill 1,260,000 times to kill him. I'm afraid it won't be that easy, Zhou Zi said at that moment. That's not necessarily the case. Most indescribable creatures have the ability to resurrect. But as long as they don't want to resurrect and stop thinking about resurrection, we don't have to kill him 1,260,000 times. Monk Jin Dang smiled and stepped forward. This little monk has a plan. What is it, Senior Jin Dang? Lotus Sun was curious. It's just an idea I just thought of. I just need to make this little benefactor give up on the idea of resurrection. Monk Jin Dang smiled kindly. He felt that the success rate of his idea was extremely high, and perhaps it could make 1212 give up on the idea of resurrection. Damn humans. I'm going to kill you all. By now, 1212 had finished reassembling, and disgusting mucus was coming out of his bloody mouth. But Jin Dang was even faster. He swiftly came up behind 1212 and slapped the ground behind him. In a flash, a solid wall of earth was constructed behind 1212, and Jin Dang even blessed the wall with a light consecration spell. Have you played table tennis before? Monk Jin Dang asked. Everyone, ? At that moment, Monk Jin Dang stepped forward without another word and lightly patted Zhou Zi on the back. Then, Zhou Zi once again turned into a beam of light and shot out. And now, in front of everyone's eyes, a miraculous scene was unfolding. 1212 stood in front of the blessed wall, impressively becoming a human pillar of flesh. Zhou Zi was sent flying by Monk Jin Dang's palm, smashing 1212 to pieces. Before 1212 could finish his cursing, he was stopped. Then, Zhou Zi bounced back from the wall behind 1212, and was sent flying again, smashing the resurrected 1212 to pieces, palm after palm, over and over again, over and over again. It was like a table tennis training session, at the 1600th round. 1212 fell into utter despair and gave up on the idea of resurrection. It was killed as soon as it was resurrected. It no longer wanted to continue this kind of life without any game experience. 1212 left very peacefully. Chapter 1672. In the endless cycle of resurrection and instant death, 1212 finally gave up on the idea of survival and chose to manually delete his account. After Zhou Zi's final wave of attacks scattered 1212, Golden Lamp Monk confirmed that it was impossible for 1212 to come back to life as a pile of minced meat, and then stopped what he was doing. Is it resolved? Zhou Zi stared at the scene in front of him in disbelief. While Golden Lamp Monk had been using him, he had been bounced around non-stop, but to tell the truth, he hadn't felt the slightest bit uncomfortable. On the contrary, he had felt comfortable, as if his whole body had been massaged. This period of time seemed very long, but also very short. By the time he came back to his senses, 1212 was already unable to get up again. Benefactor Zhou's merits are immeasurable. Golden Lamp Monk put his palms together in a Buddhist salute and praised him to his face. Z, it's been hard on you. You deserve the most credit for this. Zhuo was so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. Because this way, 1212 would be confirmed to have been killed by Zhou Zi, and no one would be able to step in and steal his head. Zhou Zi, on the other hand, looked ashamed. He rubbed his head, completely at a loss as to what was going on, and could only marvel in his heart at the powerful defensive capabilities of these Long Johns. Zhuo hadn't lied to him, these Long Johns were really very strong. Furthermore, they were ridiculously strong. It was just that Zhou Zi felt that something was a little strange. Brother Zhuo made me wear these Long Johns before he brought me here, saying that they would protect me. Zhou Zi murmured in his heart. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that Audio's goal wasn't just to keep him safe. Why did it look like he had deliberately arranged for him to pick up the slack? For a moment, Josie's thoughts were a little disordered. All of this couldn't be said to be impeccable. It was almost all part of Audio's plan, which made Josie feel that Audio seemed especially familiar with this aspect. While Josie was lost in his thoughts, his body suddenly emitted waves of hot steam. It first seeped out from the pores on his body, and then concentrated and gushed out from the top of his head, like a human-shaped chimney. This is... Josie turned pale with astonishment. After spirit power accumulates to a certain level, it will naturally be released from the top of your head and you've completed your breakthrough. This is a sign that you're about to advance. Congratulations, Z. Qin Zong understood what had happened at a glance. Josie was shocked again. I advanced. Yes, if my judgment is correct, he should be at the peak of the late stage of the foundational level. Josie's mouth was agape, and he looked dumbfounded. What the hell, you can also ascend like this? Seeing that Josie had successfully advanced just like that, he was even happier. Z. You're too outstanding. Josie, all this time, Audio had actually been looking for a reasonable successor to the King of Scavengers. Now, it seemed that Josie did indeed have the ability to inherit his legacy. Not only did he manage to get rid of a troublesome living being on this trip, he even managed to ascend a level. Peak Foundation Establishment Late Stage. At Josie's age, this realm was enough to be considered a genius. And Josie's next step was the Jidun stage. Before entering university, there were very few cultivators who could directly break through to the Golden Core stage. This once again proved Josie's outstanding talent in cultivation. At least in Audio's opinion, Josie was much stronger than he had been back then. On the other side, the expression of Na Wei, who had been sitting upright all this time, changed dramatically the moment 1212's life information completely disappeared. He had never expected that one of the two shelter creatures he had sent out would already be killed in a second. 1212. This was the most brutal of all the newly recruited creatures. Furthermore, it had the ability to resurrect indefinitely. It had actually died, just like that. Na Wei felt that the situation was a little unreal. Where's 096? What's 096 doing? He slapped the table, unable to restrain his anger. The spherical guard then used the surveillance flying insect circling the castle to transmit the scene. At that moment, 096 was being ridden by a baby. Its face was a little flushed, and its snow-white rabbit fur shook as it ran down the street, as happy as a lotus flower. Seeing this scene, Na Wei almost couldn't help but spit out 3 liters of blood. The two shelter creatures he had sent out, one had been killed in a second, and the other had become someone's mount. Wasn't this just like one of them giving someone a free kill and experience, and the other giving someone a bunch of equipment? Where did this brat come from? Na Wei felt that Wang Wan's sudden appearance was even more inconceivable. This was just a baby girl who looked to be less than a year old. How could she have subdued 096 into submission? Go and find out which family this kid belongs to. Sir, there are currently no records of the baby girl's identity in the database. We suspect that she is an unregistered resident. These words dealt a heavy blow to Na Wei's brain. Unregistered resident. A child who had been smuggled in from the slums. Although he couldn't be bothered to look at the slums, the identity census was still in place. Everyone was recorded, so it was unlikely that someone from the slums would sneak in. Then, the only possibility was that someone might have invaded this illusory realm and brought this baby girl in. Although Na Wei felt that this was inconceivable, he couldn't completely rule out this possibility. As his body trembled violently, a boundless hatred followed. Na Wei had wanted to teach Na Wei a lesson, but he didn't expect that he had underestimated the ferocity of this group of people. Although he hadn't completely given up on the ultimate version of the neo-ancient mystical weapon plan, the successive failures finally caused Na Wei to be a little overwhelmed. This was his master and his imperial city. In his territory, he was the one who bullied others. He couldn't be bullied like this. Pass down my order. Increase the intensity. Eliminate all these people. Seeing that the illusory realm might have been invaded by external enemies, Na Wei couldn't just sit back and watch. Therefore, he decided to carry out the following 3 plans. Sir, what do you plan to do? In the core area, release all the sheltered creatures in the SCP-001-010 area. In addition, dispatch the entire army of 10,000 neo-ancient mystical weapons that can be mobilized to search the entire area. At this moment, that person also stood up. In addition, I've decided to do it personally. To ensure that the illusory realm wouldn't be infiltrated by external forces, he had to do this. Shouchung's brain had been harvested. The Wuxin ancestors' Pantheon brain, which was made from Shouchung's brain cells, had also been completed. Now, he just needed to merge the Pantheon brain with his own brain. He would become this world's. No. Even the most intelligent existence in this universe. Achieving a perfect dimensionality reduction attack. Chapter 1673. It was as if he had slept for a very long time. When Shouchung regained consciousness, he felt that his soul was in an out-of-body state. A rather familiar-looking human brain was immersed in a green spirit fluid, and it was connected to an unknown body through a series of conduits. After a burst of intense mental pain, he felt that his entire soul was floating, as if it had been hooked by something. When he came back to his senses, he was already imprisoned on an electric chair in a pitch-black space. This is the Wisdom Realm. Shouchung, who had once been selected as the most intelligent youth, understood what this place was at a glance. The Wisdom Realm was a special spiritual domain that only great wise people had. It was a place that was tempered by the Naiwen Palace where mental power was gathered. Those who were slightly stronger could temper the Naiwen Palace into other derivative spaces such as memory palaces. And the highest realm was the Wisdom Realm. It was an existence that included all the advanced spaces of the Naiwen Palace. In theory, people with the Wisdom Realm could use the brain waves emitted from their brains to do anything through the power of mental transmission. However, Shouchung never thought that one day his brain would be used to merge and become someone else's appendage. Now, he was imprisoned in the Wisdom Realm. If this situation was explained in a similar academic language in the cultivation world, it was actually a different kind of possession. Possession. At this moment, in the dim and boundless Wisdom Realm, the owner of this body's illusory voice clearly fell into Shouchung's ears. Shouchung, you'd better not make a mistake. I'm just taking back what belongs to me on behalf of Master. Your master. Shouchung frowned. Previously, when his soul was in a free state, he had seen the appearance of the owner of this body with his own eyes. In his limited memory, he didn't seem to have any conflicts with this person. However, to Na Wei, everything seemed to be unimportant. In his eyes, Shouchung was just a tool to revive the God brain. Although the God brain hadn't been completely built yet, it was probably only 70% activated. But Na Wei still felt that with his current mental power, he could become an omnipotent existence. No one would have thought that the brain of the wisest person in the universe, the heartless ancestor, would be inherited by him, the only true disciple in this way. Na Wei sneered. He held a metal cane in his hand and wore a blood-colored cloak as he walked out of the palace step by step. He had no intention of explaining anything to Shouchung. This was because once the Pantheon brain was activated to 100%, it meant that Shouchung's brain would completely fuse with him. At that time, it would only take a snap of a finger to completely destroy Shouchung's personality and retain his own. Completely eliminating the foreign enemies was Na Wei's current top priority. Outside the castle, when the 10 huge cubes were transmitted to different locations in the core area at the same time, the powerful pressure brought by these indescribable creatures immediately radiated to the entire majestic imperial city below. Inside the astrology club, Xiang Yi lay on the ground and used the scope to clearly see the serial numbers of these containment devices. Their containment creatures 001-010. Although Xiang Yi had explored the holding area under the castle a few times, he didn't have the time to investigate it thoroughly. Because there were too many creatures, close to 10,000. Most of the sheltered creatures in the 010-010 area were kept in the depths of the area. There was no way to obtain specific information, and the only problem was that they didn't know what kind of strange abilities these creatures had. But using 096 as a standard, the average strength of these sheltered creatures was peak Dao God, and the strongest were Dao ancestors who had just entered the progenitor realm. There's no other way. At that moment, Xiang Yi sighed slightly as he focused his gaze on the scope. Next to him, he and Wang Ming tacitly said in unison, "We can only kill them all." After saying that, Wang Ming and Xiang Yi looked at each other and smiled. Great minds think alike. That was probably it. This is also the first time I've met Mr. Ming. How do you know that I have the ability to kill them all? Xiang Yi smiled bitterly. That's right, it's the first time. But I'm actually very confident in Brother Xiang's strength. Wang Ming also laughed. Also, my little brother was also there. Lord Na Wei in the castle probably didn't expect that he would be jumping around in front of Wang Fa with a single shot. Wang Ming's words made so much sense that Xiang Yi couldn't refute them for a moment. To be honest, he felt that Wang Ming wasn't wrong at all. After all, Wang Ling was here. Even if the sky fell down, there would be someone to hold it up. Thinking of this, he looked at his 3.2 billion light-year sighting scope and became abnormally excited. His fair face suddenly became flushed. Are you that happy? Wang Ming smiled. Of course. Xiang Yi said excitedly. Now that I know Ling Jinren is backing me up, I don't need to worry. If I can steal 1 or 2 more heads from Ling Jinren, I can brag about it for the rest of my life. Wang Ming, that was right. Except for those who knew Wang Ling well. No one knew how exciting it was to be able to steal a kill from Wang Ling. In fact, Xiang Yi wasn't the only one who had this thought. Just as the 10 cube containment devices appeared in full view of the crowd, before they were unsealed, Ajua and Kamiya Ryoko finally explained their relationship with Wang Ling. Kamiya Ryoko was still digesting the massive amount of information. You mean, classmate Wang Ling isn't your disciple at all, but, your Shifu? Yes. Ajua nodded. Ryoko, I'm very sorry all this time. I didn't mean to lie to you. I actually wanted to say it back then, but I still needed my Shifu's permission first. In that instant, Kamiya Ryoko instantly understood. The truth she had been seeking for so many years also came to an end at that moment. Because according to the timeline, the 10-year-old boy whom the Daycrawler ghost had seen back then should have been Wang Ling. In that instant, all the inexplicable dots connected. Ryoko, don't blame Senior Ajua. I asked him to keep it a secret back then. After all, the fewer people who know about classmate Wang Ling, the better, Lotus Sun said. Actually, she had already made a plan. If Kamiya Ryoko really couldn't accept Ajua hiding something from her, she would go all out, and use Mysterious Sea Sword Chi to manually erase Kamiya Ryoko's memory. Although this would be a little like a pair of beautiful sisters, at least it wouldn't destroy their relationship. In the end, Kamiya Ryoko's reaction was much better than she had imagined. Although it looked like she had taken a long time to digest it, at least she had accepted it. On the other hand, Zhou Zi and Qin Zong on the side did indeed lower their heads after hearing about it, looking thoughtful. Lotus Sun knew that she would have to explain things later. But for now, it was more important to deal with Kiyomiya Ryoko. Fortunately, Kiyomiya Ryoko wasn't angry. Instead, like Jia-in back then, she was deeply curious about Wang Ling's true strength. Kiyomiya Ryoko, then, how strong is classmate Wang Ling? Nascent soul. Soul formation. Or... At that moment, Monk Jin Deng suddenly stepped forward and said, "Miss Ryoko, do you see those containment devices in the sky? Miss Ryoko, did you feel how strong they are just now? Given Senior Jin Deng's strength, I think he should be able to kill one of them in an instant," said Kiyomiya Ryoko. Yes. Jin Deng nodded. If this little monk goes all out, he can indeed kill one of them with one palm. But Ling Jinren is different. Kiyomiya Ryoko, what's the difference? Jin Deng, he can kill 100 million with one palm. Kiyomiya Ryoko. Chapter 1674. As the indescribable creature number 001010 stood in the air, its powerful aura was released at random and swept through the entire area. Their containment devices were destroyed in the air, and that ancient light seemed to extend from time immemorial to the present, giving it an air of eternity. Everyone in the imperial city was shocked by this scene. The nobles trembled and wanted to escape from the core region. However, at this moment, their legs were stiff. Every single one of them was attacked by these cube creatures. The fear that originated from the spirit made every single resident of the imperial city cower and tremble in fear. They were at a loss as to what to do. What the hell is going on? Everything was fine, why did this happen all of a sudden? Is this a natural disaster? What on earth are these cubes? Everyone was stupefied, even the most powerful dignitaries in Imperial City didn't understand what was going on. In the air, the 10 containment cubes burst out with dazzling light, and as the cubes gradually opened up, a desolate aura hit everyone in the face. For a moment, the residents of Imperial City saw the same illusion. They saw a huge amount of blood spurt out of these cubes like a waterfall, and an extremely murderous aura attacked everything in front of them. Rubbing his eyes, the illusion of a bloody sea of slaughter instantly disappeared, and what followed was a series of explosions that sounded like the rumbling of the Great Tao. 10 humanoid monsters of different shapes and sizes broke out of their cocoons, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. But unlike 1212 and 096, these indescribable creatures looked like they were being controlled as they obediently stood where they were and didn't make any big movements. Wang Ling was calm. Sweeping his king's eye over them, he saw the mental threads that were connected to the heads of these 10 containment creatures. Sure enough, it was as he had thought, someone was manipulating these 10 containment creatures. To be able to manipulate 10 indescribable creatures at the same time, Wang Ling felt that this person was pretty fierce. But fortunately, the current situation was under control. Are they the creatures of the old days? At that moment, Wang Ling stared at all these creatures, his calm gaze seemingly able to see through the ages. A while ago, he had just had a showdown with the grave god, who claimed to have inherited the bloodline of the outer gods of the old days. He hadn't expected to run into him again. He still had that strange eye embryo. Although he couldn't find any connection between it and the king's eye at the moment, he firmly believed that it might be able to think of another way for him to perfectly suppress his power. However, it was clear that this was not the time to experiment. There were too many innocent people in this imperial city. In the end, they still had to move these 10 sheltered creatures to other places. Thus, the moment he opened his king's eye, the 3-petal golden lotus in his eye instantly bloomed. A golden vortex appeared in the sky, gradually expanding from the size of a coin to the size of a vast lake. Then, it swept in all directions, spreading all along the way, giving birth to countless golden vines. What I saw was a city. Down below, the people in the Imperial City were dazzled by this miraculous and shocking scene. Above their heads, a vast cluster of buildings appeared. Towering ancient buildings overflowed with light and color, and exuded boundless divinity that filled the entire sky. This was a heavenly city. As high as the sky, this was another ability that Wang Ling had never displayed before. Heavenly King's Eye. This was the heavenly world, created by the King's Eye's enormous power, a supreme space that was above the supreme world, core world, intrinsic spirit field, and all the other big and small worlds created by the power of chaos. Falling into someone else's space meant that the ruler of that space could control you. The ruler was a godlike existence. But the truth was that there was a limit to this. If the other party's spatial ability was greater than that of the ruler of space, they could do the opposite and directly annex the other party's space. Not only could they achieve the reverse polarity, they could even absorb the other party's space for their own use. This meant that as long as Wang Ling wanted to, back when he had been in the Grave God's supreme world, he had been able to completely devour it. But that world had been tainted with too much blood. He was worried that his heavenly world would hurt his eyes after devouring the supreme world, so in the end he hadn't done it. This is the city of heavenly worlds. Xiang Yi used his 3.2 billion light-year scope to see everything clearly. He couldn't help but mutter. This was really outrageous. A golden city of heavenly worlds that stretched as far as the eye could see appeared in front of everyone just like that. All the buildings inside glowed with magic light, and every brick and stone was engraved with powerful nomological imprints. It wasn't just one great Tao. The power of all kinds of great Tao crisscrossed on it and then spread out. The indescribable sense of grandeur and magnificence hit everyone's hearts, making them shudder with fear. Everyone in the Imperial City was stupefied when they saw this scene. Including Na Wei, who had been leading the team to search the entire city for suspects. They all stood rooted to the spot at that moment. He had clearly fused with the god brain and had activated it to 70% capacity, but he still couldn't stop trembling. This huge city of heavenly worlds gave off an unimaginable sense of oppression. Just by being connected together, it was almost enough to make people feel the urge to kneel down and worship it. Even monk Jin Dang was completely stunned. With one look, he knew that this had to be Wang Ling's doing, so he naturally sighed. The city of heavenly worlds. Ling Jinren is the only true god in the world. Even Jin Dang sighed with emotion, so it was obvious that Lotus Sun's and Jamiya Ryoko's beautiful faces had turned pale. Apart from them, Zhou Zi and Qin Zong were also naturally shocked. It was only when Zhua had laid his cards on the table with Jamiya Ryoko just now that Zhou Zi had learned that Wang Ling was his Shifu. He had thought it was a joke. It even felt a little unreal. How could Zhua, the grand savior of the cultivation world who had thwarted the sky-swallowing toad back then, be the junior brother of a Foundation establishment student? But now, with the appearance of the City of Heavenly Worlds, Zhou Zi realized that he was too young. Then, he figured it all out. No wonder Zhua was so eager for him to make a contribution in this operation. At first, he had thought that this was Zhua's test for him, but in fact, this was simply his application to become a disciple. If he could become Zhua's disciple and Wang Ling's grand disciple, he would truly be able to soar on the spot. Even if he lost 2 legs over the next decade or so, it wouldn't matter. In the next few years, he might grow faster than anyone else even if he walked backwards. Of course, the person who was most shocked by this scene was, at that moment, it was none other than Qin Zong. He had heard so much about Wang Ling from Gu Xuanji. He had never expected that he would actually fall into Wang Ling's world line. Qin Zong would never have expected it. This was the man who had been placed on his offering table for him to worship all year round. Now, this man was in flesh and blood in front of him. With those familiar dead fish eyes and the faint sound of breathing, he was alive. You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.